Welcome back. In this video, we are going to start working on the features section. So first of all, let me select this desktop frame and increase its height. I'm going to select it and just expand it like this. And now let's analyze our wireframe. Let's see what we need. Here we need a few text layers. We need to have a headline, we need to have a supporting text and a subtitle or the description. And then right underneath, we need to have 2 rows of features. And in each row, we need to have 3 different features. And each of these features has an icon, a title, and a description. So how can we structure it? Well, just like what we did here in our hero section, we are going to create a section, a large section, and inside we are going to create 2 different containers, one for the top content and one for these bottom content. So let's start creating it, and then we will get back to our wireframe once we are done with all the frames. Okay, so first of all, as usual, just hit A on your keyboard to select the frame tool. I'm going to draw a frame like this, and I'm going to rename it to features. I'm going to make sure that its width is set to 1440, its height doesn't matter, and now let's add auto layout to it. I'm going to hit Shift and A to add auto layout to it, and here its horizontal resizing option should be fixed, just like this. Now let's set the padding here. You might think that why aren't we just duplicating this section, this hero section, move it down and just remove the content and just replace them with new content? Yes, we can, but I'm gonna repeat this process again and again and again until you get used to auto layout. I repeat it intentionally because I want you to remember all these steps. If you don't repeat it, you won't learn it, believe me. Okay, so here I'm gonna set the horizontal padding to 150. But what about the vertical padding? Yes, you are right. The top and the bottom padding should be 96 pixels. And now we can start adding the containers inside. But before we do that, I think it's a good idea to change the background color of this frame, to somehow separate it. Since the features section is so important, it's better to make sure that it grabs the user's attention by just slightly changing its background color. So I'm going to select this frame. I'm going to head over to the fill section, and actually I'm going to use gray 25 for the background, just like this. As you can see, it's quite light, and that's why I like to have that 25 variant within my color palette. All right, good. Now inside this features frame, we need to have 2 containers. So I'm gonna hit A on my keyboard, draw a container, just like this. It tries to hug the content inside because we set the vertical resizing option to hug. That's fine. I'm gonna select this frame and just rename it to container. And I'm going to add auto layout to it, hit Shift and A. And now I'm going to set its horizontal resizing option to fill container, and the vertical one can be set to hog. Now let's get rid of the padding. I'm going to set them to 0 and 0, and we can just duplicate this container, hit Ctrl D or Command D, but they should stack vertically. What should I do? Yes, you're right. I need to select the parent element, which is the features frame, and then I need to change the auto layout direction from horizontal to vertical, like that. And now they stack vertically. Okay, our containers are ready. Now let's start adding elements to them. So let's start with the top container. We need to have the supporting text, the headline, and the description. So inside this container, I'm going to create another frame called content. So let's just draw another frame inside, add auto layout to it, and just rename it to content. And also I'm going to set its horizontal resizing option to fill container and just get rid of the padding again. Alright, now inside this content frame, I'm going to need a very small text layer for the supporting text. So I'm going to create a text layer, hit T, create a text layer, and here I'm going to type features. Alright. Now I'm going to change the text style to text medium bold this time, not medium. So let me find it, text medium bold. There it is. And also I'm going to change its color to gray 400 again. And we need to check the contrast ratio as well, since we changed the background color. So here I'm going to set it to gray 400, and let's run the contrast plugin here. Yes, it passed all these tests. So we are good to go. Now right underneath, we need to have the headline. So I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. Now it sits right next to it. So we need to put them inside another frame. I'm going to select them both, hit Shift and A to create a frame, and I'm going to rename it heading and supporting text. And now while this frame is selected, I'm going to change the direction to vertical. Good. And inside, I'm going to select this duplicated text layer and just change its size. I'm going to use the display medium size, this one, and it should be bold. As for the color, we need to set it to gray 900, just like this, to have a good visual hierarchy. And here I'm going to type the CRM that's truly your own. All right, the headline is also ready. Now we need to set the spacing between them. So I'm going to select this heading and supporting text frame, and I'm going to set the spacing to 12. All right, now I'm going to align everything to the center like that. And also I'm going to select the content frame and align everything to the center, just like this. All right, now we need to add the description right underneath. So let's add a text layer inside this content frame. And here I'm going to paste the description that I already prepared. All right, here it is. It's way too big. We need to make it smaller. Do you know what size I should choose? Yes, you're right. This particular size, text XL medium. So I'm going to select it and just change its text style to text XL. Let me find it. There it is. And medium. But it should be placed right underneath, so we can select this content frame and just change its direction to vertical like that. Now I'm going to select this text and just change its color to gray 400. And it's too long, isn't it? So we need to use the trick I showed you right here. We need to basically put it inside another frame and just add some padding to it. So let's do that. I'm going to select this text and this frame, hold down the Shift key to select them both, and put them inside another frame, hit Shift and A, and just call it heading and description. And now we can add some horizontal padding to it. So for this, let me see, we set the horizontal padding to 224. Let's select this one and set the horizontal padding to 224 as well. Now I'm going to select this text inside and just change its horizontal resizing option to fill container, just like that, to take up the whole available width within its parent container. And now I'm going to select this heading and description frame, this one that we just created, and just set its resizing option to fill container. And now we'll get the exact same width as we've got here. So if I select this text, its width is set to 692. If I select this one, it's also 692, and it's also responsive. So there is one more thing we need to do here, and that is setting the spacing between this top frame and this text. So let's do that quickly. For that, we need to select its parent, which is this one, and I'm going to set the spacing to 20. But you might ask, why 20? Why not 24? Because here we set it to 24, right? And we need to keep everything consistent. Well, the reason I set it to 24 here is because I intentionally wanted to have more breathing room between these two texts, since I had a very large title here. And usually in the hero section, we want to make sure that all these content gets enough attention. But here, since we used a smaller headline, I decided to choose a smaller margin as well. That's why I set it to 20. All right, now it's time to head over to the next container and just work on the features. So let's see how we can start working on the features. Well, as I said, for each feature, we need to have one icon, one title, and one description. First of all, I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to create a frame, just like this, and I'm going to call it feature. Basically, I'm going to create a feature frame, and inside this feature frame, I'm going to have one icon and another frame that contains these texts, okay? So here I created this feature frame, and I'm going to add auto layout to it, hit Shift and A, and I'm going to set its resizing option to fixed width and fixed height, because I don't want it to hide the content while I'm designing this feature frame, okay? That's why I wanted them to be fixed. All right, inside, I'm going to have a circle. So I'm going to create a circle using a frame. So I'm going to create a frame, just hold down the Shift key to create a perfect square like this. and I'm gonna set its width and height to 48 and 48. Now I'm gonna add a fill to it. Let's add a gray 100 to it, like this one. Okay, cool. And also we need to make it rounded. Now I'm gonna select this feature frame and align everything to the center, and also get rid of these padding. We don't need them. I'm gonna remove them just like this. All right, now let me rename this frame to icon. And inside this circle, I'm gonna place one small icon. So here I'm gonna add a statistic icon. Therefore, I'm gonna go to resources, and if I go to components, since I turned all these icons here in our design system into components, we can just find them right here. And I'm gonna look for statistic. All right, there it is. This one looks good. The size is fine, 24 by 24 pixels looks good. I'm gonna align it to the center, both horizontally and vertically. But we need to change its color as well. At the moment it's using black. I'm gonna change it to gray 600, this one. All right, our icon is ready. Now let's create the text. So right underneath, we need to have two text layers. I'm gonna hit T on my keyboard to create a text layer. It will be placed right next to it, that's fine. And here I'm gonna type Reach Analytics. All right, as for the size, it looks good. We just need to make it semi-bold. It looks much better now. And obviously the color should be changed. I'm gonna change it to gray 900. All right, now let's select this feature frame and change the direction of auto layout to vertical. I'm gonna move this icon up in the layers list to put it above this text. And now I can select this text, duplicate it, and just add the description here. And I'm gonna copy and paste the description I already prepared. There it is. I'm gonna make it smaller, it's way too big. I'm gonna change its text style to text MD. Let's find it. It should be right here. Text MD medium, and the color is gonna be gray 400. All right, now I'm gonna select this description, hold down the shift key and select the title and put them inside an auto layout frame, hit shift and A, and I'm gonna rename it to text and supporting text, just like that. But as you can see, this frame goes outside the boundary of our main frame. That's because the resizing option is set to hog content. I'm gonna change it to fill container like this. It's not fixed yet, but it will be. Now while it's selected, I'm gonna hit enter to select the child items inside and just change the resizing option to fill container. And as you can see now, all the elements are taking up the whole available width within their own parent. Okay, now let's select this text and supporting frame and just make sure that the spacing between them is set to 8. The reason we don't set it to 16 or 12 is because here we have various small elements, therefore they are so related and we don't need to separate them. If I set it to 16, look what happens. You see, now it doesn't look that this title belongs to this description. That's why 8 is a good number here. But we need to separate this frame, this text and supporting text frame, from this icon. So we need to select this feature frame and just increase this value here. I'm gonna increase it to 20, just like that, and our first feature is ready. Don't worry about this part, it's cut off, it will be fixed later. All right, our first feature is created. Now I'm gonna duplicate it twice, hit Ctrl D or Command D. So we have 3 features in one row. And now I'm gonna select them all and put them inside another box. I'm gonna hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame, and I'm gonna call it row. This is gonna be our first row. This row should take up the whole available width of its parent, which is this container. Therefore, its resizing option should be set to fill container. Now the elements inside these feature frames should take up the whole available width within this frame. So you know what? I'm gonna select this row, hit enter to select all the child elements. And here, as you can see, we have a fixed width. We already set it to fixed width, and now it's time to change that. I'm gonna change it to fill container. Now they take up the whole available width within this container, maintaining this spacing between these child elements, which is 8. It's not good. We need to set it to 32. Do you know why 32? Because here, if I just unhide my layout grid, you see that we set the gutter to 32 when we created this layout grid. So it's better to set the margin between them to 32 as well. It's not a must, but it's better to do that. All right, now we need another row of features. So I'm gonna select this row. I'm gonna duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. And now these rows are sitting next to each other. That's not good. You know what? I'm gonna select them both. I'm gonna put them inside another frame, hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame, rename it to content, and just change the direction to vertical, like this. And now let's change the resizing option here to fill container, hit enter, and change the resizing option to fill container, and we are almost done. The only thing we need to do is select this content frame and just increase the spacing, this vertical spacing between these rows. I'm gonna double this amount. It shouldn't be 32. I see many beginners set it to 32 as well, but that's not good. When you have multiple frames like this, and they are sitting close to each other, the user will have a hard time to distinguish between them. So it's better to double the vertical amount when you have two rows like this. I'm gonna increase it to 64, and now it looks much better. Of course, you can go ahead and change all this content. I'm not gonna do that because it's simple. You just need to change it. For example, here I'm gonna change it to 24/7 support. And if you wanna change the icon, since it's a component, you know what to do. You just need to select it, and from here, from this drop down menu, you can just open up this swap instance window and just look for your desired icon. I'm gonna type chat, and I'm gonna choose this one. For this, you can change it to whatever you want. I'm gonna change it to 100 plus integrations, and I'm gonna change the icon as well to something related to code and coding. So here I'm gonna type code, and I'm gonna pick this one. You see how easy it is to swap instances when you use components? All right, we are almost done. Now we need to select our features frame, and we need to increase this value here. We need to increase the spacing between these two containers. So I'm gonna set it to 64, and we are done. Let's see whether everything is responsive or not. Make sure to check the responsiveness always. I'm gonna select this features frame, set the constraints to left and right and top. And also I'm gonna eliminate this gap between these two sections. I'm gonna move it up using the arrow keys. Make sure that there is no gap in between. And let's select this desktop frame and check the responsiveness. As you can see, we have a fully responsive features section. It's so cool, isn't it? Welcome back. In this video, we're gonna start working on the CTA section that should be placed right under the features section. So let's see what we need. For the CTA section, we just need a title, a subtitle, and these action buttons. It's quite simple to create. So as usual, let's start by creating a frame as our main section. I'm gonna hit A on my keyboard to select a frame tool and just draw a frame, just like this. Make sure that the width is set to 1440. I'm gonna add auto layout to it, and I'm gonna rename it to CTA. All right, now I'm gonna set the horizontal resizing option to fixed width, and also I'm gonna change the constraints here to left and right to make it responsive. And now let's change the horizontal padding to 150, and the vertical padding should be 96. Now inside this CTA section, we need to have a container. So I'm gonna hit A and just draw a container like this. And let's add auto layout to this container as well. I'm gonna rename it to container, and I'm gonna set its horizontal resizing option to fill container. Now I'm gonna get rid of the padding inside this container. We don't need any padding. And inside this container, we need to place a content frame. So let's draw a frame inside like this, and it should also fill its parent container like that. And let's just rename it to content. And I'm gonna add auto layout to it, hit Shift and A. Now let's get rid of the padding of this content frame. I'm gonna set them to 0. And now we can start adding the content inside. All right, you know what? Let's select the content inside this content frame, inside this container right here. Here we have this heading and description. I'm just gonna copy it, hit Control C or Command C. And now I'm gonna select the content frame inside this container and just paste it here, hit Control V or Command V. But for this section, we don't need this supporting text. I'm gonna select it and just remove it. And now I'm gonna change the text here. Here I'm gonna type start your 30-day free trial. And as for the subtitle, I'm gonna type join 1500 plus companies today and start growing your business. What else do we need? Well, here we need to have two action buttons. So what I'm going to do is select these buttons here in the hero section. I'm going to select this buttons frame. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it inside this content frame. It's placed right here. That's fine. We just need to select this content frame and just change its direction to vertical. And here I'm going to select this heading and description frame and just change its resizing option to fill container. And also I'm going to change its vertical resizing option to hog content. All right, so far so good. But where is our buttons? It's outside the boundary of this content. But why? Because we need to select our content frame and just change its vertical resizing option to hog content. It's right there. Align everything to the center and just change the spacing here. For this section, I'm going to change the vertical spacing to 40, and also I'm going to change these text. I'm going to change this buttons label to learn more, and as you can see, it's fully responsive, and this one can be intact. And just like that, our CTA section is also ready. I'm going to point out something here. If you have extended multiple frames like this and you want to collapse all of them, just select the parent frame. In this case, it's CTA. Hold down the Option key or Alt key on your keyboard and just click on this down arrow here. And as you can see, everything will be collapsed. All right, now I'm going to get rid of the gap between these two sections. I'm going to move it up using the arrow keys on my keyboard like this. And now let's check out its responsiveness. So I'm going to select this desktop frame and I'm going to check it out. As you can see, everything is responsive. Here you might ask, why aren't our elements aligned with these columns? And that's a good question. Many people think that all of our elements should be aligned with these columns, and that's wrong. The reason we are using this box model is to align everything perfectly with our layout grid. However, the elements that are placed inside these boxes, inside these frames, don't need to be aligned with our columns. It's impossible to align them with our columns. If we try to align everything with these columns, our design wouldn't be responsive, because when we try to shrink this screen, look what happens. The placement of all these elements changes. So the only thing that should be aligned with these columns is our parent frames. In this case, it's this container. You see, it's perfectly aligned with these columns. So keep that in mind. It's very, very important. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to start working on our second features section, this section. So here, let's see what we need. Again, we need to have a few text layers at the top as usual. And then underneath, we need to have these cards, these feature cards. So the way I'm going to structure it is I'm going to create two containers like what we did here for our hero section and also here for this feature section, and inside these containers I'm gonna place the content. So since we repeated this process many times, I'm sure by now you've learned how to set up the section and how to set the padding and everything. Therefore, I'm not gonna repeat this process again here. Instead, I'm gonna select this features section and I'm gonna duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, move it down and place it right under this CTA section. I'm going to select this desktop frame and just increase its height like this. And for this feature section, we don't need to change its name. I'm going to remove the content inside these content frames. So if I just collapse everything and I open up this features frame, inside we have two containers, right? I'm going to open up this one. Inside we have the content. We need to keep this content frame. We just need to change the content. But here for this container, I'm gonna open up this content frame and I'm just gonna get rid of these two rows. I'm just gonna remove them and we are good to go. So here we can go ahead and modify the content. I'm not gonna do that. You can do it on your own because basically you just need to change these text. This supporting text should be intact, but here the headline and the description can be changed. Instead, let's move on to the next container and let's start designing these cards. It's gonna be super interesting. Just like what we did here, I'm gonna create two rows and in each row, I'm gonna place two different cards. But first, let's design one card and then duplicate it. All right. So inside this content frame right here, I'm going to draw a frame. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard and just draw a frame. I'm going to add auto layout to it, hit Shift and A, and I'm going to rename it to card. Let's set the horizontal and vertical resizing options to fixed width and fixed height for now. And I'm going to enlarge it a little bit like this. And let's add a fill to it. For the background, I'm going to use white. So I'm going to add this base white color. And now let's see how we should structure the content inside. Inside each card, we need to have a title, a subtitle, or a description, and a large screenshot, right? So what we can do is put these text layers inside another frame and just create another frame for this screenshot. Okay? So let's do that. I'm going to hit T on my keyboard to create a text layer. And here I'm going to copy and paste the title that I already prepared. All right, there it is. It's way too big, so let's scale it down. We need to just change the text style to maybe text XL semi-bold since it's a title like this. It looks good. I'm going to change its color to gray 900. And now we need a description as well. So I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, but they should stack vertically. So I'm going to select them both and I'm going to put them inside another frame, hit Shift and A to add auto layout to them. And here I'm going to rename it to text and supporting text. Change the direction of auto layout to vertical. The vertical spacing between these items can be 8 pixels, that's fine. I just need to select this text and make it smaller. I'm gonna use text medium like this, and the color is gonna be gray 400. Now I'm gonna copy and paste the description I already prepared. There it is. Now I'm gonna select this text and change its resizing option to fill container. I'm going to select this one and set its resizing option to fill container as well. And I'm going to left align both of them. So I'm going to select them both and just left align both of them. Here our frame should be left aligned as well. All right, now I'm going to select this text and supporting text frame. And I'm going to change its resizing option to fill container to take up the whole available width within this card. Now let's set the padding of this card. I'm going to select this desktop frame and just hide my layout grid for a second to see everything clearly. Here we need to have some padding around our content, right? We don't have enough breathing room. So I'm going to select this card frame, and I'm just going to change its padding. I'm going to set its horizontal and vertical padding to 32 and 32. Now we have enough breathing room around our text. Therefore, it would be much easier for the user to read the content and to scan the content actually. Now I'm going to increase the height of this card. The height of these cards should be fixed, so I'm going to increase it to something like 500 or maybe 498, something like this. Let me just increase its width as well. Alright, now what I'm going to do is put a frame inside this card that includes our screenshot. Okay, so here I'm going to hit A on my keyboard to select the frame tool, and I'm going to make sure that I selected this card frame. I'm going to draw a frame inside, just like this. And as you can see, it's taking up space here. This frame shouldn't be part of the flow of our design. Therefore, we need to select it. And as you may remember, when we talked about auto layout, I mentioned about a feature called absolute position. If you don't want an element to be part of the flow, we just need to select it. And we just need to click on this little icon right here, absolute position. I'm going to click on it. And as you can see, now it's no longer taking up any space. And that's exactly what we need. I'm going to rename it to content, and I'm going to align it with this frame here. Okay, make sure that it's perfectly aligned. The left padding should be 32. Now I'm going to expand it just like this, and it can go outside the boundary of this card. Something like this looks good. What about the top margin? I'm going to set the top margin to 32 as well. So I'm going to move it down a few pixels. Now everything looks good. So let's select this content frame now and just add a fill to it. And from here, I'm going to go to image, not video, image, and I'm going to choose an image from the assets folders. Here I'm going to choose the dashboard desktop that we used in the hero section, but I'm going to reposition it. To do that, I'm going to change this fill to crop. And then I can simply move it down like that. I can also scale it down. So while this image is selected, I'm going to hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and just scale it down like this. So now let's change the styling of this card a little bit to make it look even better. What should I do? Well, obviously we need to make it rounded because we used rounded elements almost everywhere. So I'm going to select this card frame and I'm going to increase its corner radius value to 24, but I also want to add a stroke to it. While this card is selected, I'm going to head over to stroke and I'm going to add a light stroke to it. Basically, I'm going to use gray 100 like this, and now it looks much better. But we are not done yet. I'm going to add a stroke to this content inside as well, to this frame. So I'm going to select it and just add a stroke to it as well. It should be gray 100 and it should be rounded as well. While it's selected, I'm going to increase the corner radius to 12, not 24, to 12. When you place an element inside a rounded element, like in this case, if you have a rounded card and you place something inside with rounded corners, make sure that the child element's corner radius is smaller than the parent element. In this case, the parent element has a corner radius of 24 and the child element has a corner radius of 12. Alright, our first card is ready. Now we need to design the second card. For the second card, I'm going to select this card. I'm going to duplicate it. Hit Ctrl D or Command D. Now I'm going to select these two cards and just put them inside another frame to create a row. Hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame, and I'm just going to rename it to row. The direction should be horizontal to put them next to each other, and I'm going to set the spacing between them to 32, just like this. As you can see, this card is cut off. That's fine because we need to change its resizing options. Alright, here is what I'm going to achieve. When we try to make this page responsive, I want this large card, this larger one, to be fluid, to be responsive, so its width should be adjustable according to our screen's width, but this one, the smaller one, should have a fixed width. How can I do that? Let me show you how. Here, if I select these two cards, both of them, you see we have a fixed width here. If I set it to fill container, look what happens. Nothing, right? That's because here our row also has a fixed width. We need to set it to fill container. Now, as you can see, these cards are taking up the space within their parent container equally. So here, if I select this card, you see its width is 554, this one 554 as well. And if I try to resize this row, which is their parent container, you see they resize equally as well. That's not what I want. I want the left one to be responsive, to be fluid, and the right one to be fixed. The way we can do that is like this. We select this one and we make sure that its horizontal resizing option is set to fill container, but this one should have a fixed width here. So I'm going to set it to fixed width and I'm going to decrease its width, just like this. As you can see, as I make this one smaller, the other card gets bigger because we set its horizontal resizing option to fill. So it tries to take up the whole available space within this container. I'm going to select this one and I'm going to set its width to something like 420. Let me just type 420 here. And just like this, our two cards are ready. Now we need to change the content here. I'm going to select this content frame inside this smaller card. I'm going to move it down like this. Also, I'm going to change the text. Let me just copy and paste the title I already prepared, something like this. Now I'm going to select this content frame and I'm going to change its content. I'm going to replace it with this dashboard mobile version, this one, the smaller one. I'm going to change it to fill like this, and also I'm going to make it smaller. Let me set its width to something like 200 or maybe 194. I'm going to set the width to 194. Like that. And now again, you can go ahead and just crop it like this and just change its placement. I'm going to move it down and place it however I want. I think it looks very good. I'm going to select it now, move it up, and I'm going to align it to the center, just like this. Make sure to check the top margin here. Just hold down the Option or Alt key on your keyboard to check the margin between these two frames. It should be 32. Alright, great, we are almost done, but there is one thing I'd like to change here. I'm going to change the width of this smaller card, and the reason is here we have one single word left in this line. It's better to avoid these situations when it comes to typography. Since we have a fixed width, we can just adjust it here. If its resizing option was set to fill container, we didn't need to change anything because it would be responsive. But here we can just decrease this width a little bit. Let's set it to 416. Now it looks much better. Okay, now that our cards are ready, I'm gonna go ahead and just duplicate this row. I'm gonna select this row, duplicate it. Now I'm gonna select the content frame right here, and I'm gonna decrease the spacing between these cards. I'm gonna set it to 32, like that. And also, I'm gonna change the placement of these two cards right here at the bottom. According to our wireframe right here, we need to change their place, and it's quite easy to do. And if I select one of these cards, maybe this one, I can just use the arrow keys on my keyboard to just move it to the right side, just like this. We can also go ahead and change the content here, but I'm not gonna do that. You know how to change the text. Instead, we can just simply select the content here inside and just try to crop it. Maybe I can move this screenshot up like this to see all these transactions. For this one as well, I'm gonna select it and I'm just gonna move it like this to see all these transactions. I'm gonna scale it up like this, and we are good to go. Our cards are ready. Now let's see whether they are responsive or not. I'm gonna select this features section and make sure that its constraints are set to left and right and top. I'm gonna select the desktop frame now and just try to resize it. As you can see, it's fully responsive. So in each row, we have one card which is responsive and one card which is fixed, which allows us to create this dynamic and fun layout. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to design the integration section of this homepage. So let's dive in. First, I'm going to select this desktop frame and I'm just going to increase the height just like this. And let's see what we need for this integration section. As usual, we need to have these text layers. That's fine. We already designed them. Then right underneath, we need to have the Polio logo. And then we need to place all the tools logos, or let's say the app icons, right underneath. So the way I'm going to design it is like this. I'm going to put the logo, the Polio logo right here. And then I'm going to create some lines that go into these app logos. Like what we see here, if I go to our mood board, if I just zoom in, you see these lines like these flowchart lines. I'm going to create this kind of line, and each line comes out of this Polio logo and it goes into each tool's logo. I think it would be quite cool. So let's see how we can structure it. Obviously, we need to have two containers inside our main section. So what I'm going to do is select this features section. I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, and I'm going to move it down and just place it right under this section. I'm going to get rid of the background. I don't need any background for this section. So I'm going to remove the fill. And also, let's see what we have inside. Inside we have two containers. The top one looks good. We just need to change the content here. So here I'm going to change the supporting text to integrations. The headline can be integrate Polio with over 500 apps. And for the subtitle, I'm going to type Polio CRM works seamlessly with your favorite apps. Use over 500 tools and apps by just one click. Just like this, our top container is ready. So let me collapse this content frame. Now we need to get into the second container. So here inside, we have this content frame and we have these rows. I'm going to get rid of these rows. We don't need them. Instead, inside, I'm going to place the Polio logo. So I'm going to select it in the nav bar, just like this. I'm going to select it, copy it, and I'm going to paste it inside the content frame in this bottom container. Make sure to place it inside this content frame. Now I'm going to scale it up. To scale it up, I'm going to hit K on my keyboard to select the scale tool. and I'm gonna set its height to 80. Don't worry about its width, it doesn't matter. Now I'm gonna select the content frame and I'm gonna align it to the center. Right underneath, we need to create those lines. But first, let's see how many logos we need to place here. If you open up the assets folder, inside the logos folder, you will have this integrations folder. Inside we have 10 different logos. So we need to have 10 different lines as well. Keep that in mind. And now let's create that line. I'm going to create the line outside this frame, then I'll cut it and paste it here. So to create that line, I'm going to use the pen tool. I'm going to left click somewhere to create a node and just create a node somewhere else like this. Now I'm going to hit done to create this line. And to see what I'm doing here, I'm going to change its color to white for now. What I'm going to do now is add some curvature to both these sides, to both these nodes. I'm going to select this line, I'm going to hit enter to enter the edit mode. Then I'm going to hold down the control or command key on my keyboard to select the bend tool here in the toolbar. Now I'm going to hover over this node right here. Let me zoom in. Left click and drag while holding down the shift key on your keyboard. So once again, hold down the control or command key on your keyboard to select the bend tool. Then left click on this node and drag while holding down the shift key, just like this. As you can see now, this handle is created, allowing me to create this curvature. Something like this looks fine. Now I'm going to repeat this for this node. I'm going to hold down the command or control key on my keyboard, left click and drag while holding down the shift key on my keyboard. But this time I'm going to drag it up like this. And now I'm going to hit done and our line is created. Now while it's selected, I'm going to make these points rounded. So I'm going to head over to the stroke section, and from here, I'm going to select round and round. All right, now I'm going to select this and I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Here the height is 122. I'm going to decrease this value to maybe 100, something like this, or 98. Yeah, 98 looks good. Now I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to hit Ctrl D or Command D and I'm going to flip it horizontally. I'm going to right click on it, and from here, I'm going to hit flip horizontal, just like that. And let's move it to the right side, and the starting point should be right here. Now we need 8 more lines. So what I'm going to do is select this line, duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. I'm going to hit enter to enter the edit mode, and I'm going to select this bottom node, and using the arrow keys on my keyboard, I'm going to move it to the left. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and use the left arrow key on my keyboard, just like this. Once I'm done, I'm going to hit done. Now I'm going to duplicate it once again. I'm going to flip it horizontally like this, move it to the right, and make sure that it's aligned with all these lines. And we are going to repeat this process until we have 10 lines. I'm going to select this one, duplicate it, hit enter to enter the edit mode, select this bottom node, and using the arrow keys on your keyboard, you can move it to the left. All right, I'm going to hit done. Let's duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, flip it horizontally, move it to the right, and let's repeat this. I'm going to duplicate it, hit enter, select this node, and move it to the left, hit done, duplicate it, flip it horizontally, and I'm going to move it to the right. Let's see how many lines we've got. 1, 2, 3, 4, so we've got 8 lines. We need 2 more. I'm going to duplicate this one, hit enter, select this node, move it to the left, hit done, duplicate it, and flip it horizontally, and finally move it to the right. So in total, we've got 10 different lines. That's exactly what we needed. Now I'm going to select them all and put them inside a frame, but we cannot use auto layout here. Instead, I'm going to right click on one of them while they are all selected, and I'm going to click on frame selection, just like this. Let's rename it to lines. All right, now let's change their color since our background is white. I'm going to hit enter to select all these lines, and here I'm going to change the color to gray 100. So let me set it to gray 100 here. There it is. And now I'm going to select it, cut it, hit Ctrl X or Command X. Now I'm going to select this content frame and paste it inside, hit Ctrl V or Command V. What I'm going to do now is put this lines frame and this logo in one auto layout frame. So I'm going to select them both, and I'm going to hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame, and I'm going to rename it to logo and lines. Let's set the spacing between these two elements to 8, And we also want this frame to take up the whole available space within its parent container, which is this content frame. So we need to change its horizontal resizing option to fill container, like that. And also I'm going to select this lines frame and make sure to set its resizing option to fill container. But when I do that, as you can see, these lines are not scaled. So I'm going to undo it. I'm going to hit Ctrl Z or Command Z. And before I set this resizing option to fill container, I'm going to select this lines frame, hit enter to select all the lines inside. And here I'm going to change their constraints. Instead of top and left, I'm going to set them to top and scale. This way, when we select this lines frame and we set its horizontal resizing option to fill container, all those lines will be scaled. Look what happens now if I set it to fill container. You see that? It's super cool. This way all these lines will be responsive as well. Alright, cool. Now let's place all those logos down here. I'm gonna open up the assets folder. I'm gonna select them all and just drag them and drop them somewhere around here. Now I'm gonna select all these logos and I'm gonna hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame. Hit Shift and A, just like this. And I'm going to rename this frame to logos. Now I'm going to cut this frame, hit Ctrl X or Command X, and I'm going to place it inside our content frame right here. I'm going to select this content frame and I'm going to hit Ctrl V or Command V. But we want this logos frame to take up the whole available width of its parent element, right? So we need to change its resizing option to fill container like this. And also, we want the spacing between these logos to be automatically adjusted according to our screen's width, right? So we need to head over to the advanced settings and just change the spacing mode from packed to space between, just like this. Now I'm going to select the content frame and I'm going to decrease the spacing between items to 16 since these lines are related to these logos. And also we need to shrink these lines a little bit because they are not aligned perfectly with these logos. So what I'm going to do is select this logo and lines frame and I'm going to add some padding just like this. When you do that, they will shrink because we set the constraints of lines to scale. So I'm going to set the padding to 48 maybe. And now they are aligned. You can also change the order of these logos if you want. For instance, I can select this one, the Zapier icon, and I'm going to use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move it around like this. If you want, you can just change the order of these logos however you want. Alright, you might say that we are done and we are basically done, but I'm going to take it to the next level. I'm going to make these lines on the side to fade out gradually. How can we do that? Do you have any idea? Yes, you are right. We can add a gradient to this frame, but before we do that, let's go ahead and check whether this section is responsive or not. I'm going to select this desktop frame and I'm going to change its width. As you can see, everything is responsive. Our texts are responsive, our logos and our lines are also responsive. Perfect. I'm going to set the width to 1440. And now let's see how we can add the gradient to these lines. The way we can add a gradient to these lines is like this. I'm going to select the lines frame here and I'm going to put it inside another frame. So while this lines frame is selected, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to click on frame selection to put it inside another frame. And I'm going to name it lines and gradients. Now inside this frame, I'm going to draw a frame. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard and draw a frame like this. Make sure that this frame is placed inside your lines and gradient frame, not inside the lines frame. It's so important. I'm going to rename it to gradient. And I can make it a little bit larger. Now I'm going to head over to the field section, hit this plus button and just change it to linear. The color should be white because our background is white and the opacity of the second color should be 0. Now I can change the direction like this. And as you can see, these lines are fading out. And that's exactly what I needed. So now we need this gradient on the other side as well. But first, I'm going to align it to the left. I'm going to duplicate it. Hit Ctrl D or Command D. Now I'm going to align it to the right like this. And also I'm going to flip it. I'm going to right click on it and just hit flip horizontal. We are almost done, but make sure that the constraints of this right gradient is set to top and right instead of top and left. Otherwise, when we try to shrink the screen, it won't stay on the right side. That's so important. But also we need to add a gradient to these logos as well. How can we do that? Here we have an auto layout frame. Well, we can use the absolute position. So let me just select this gradient, this left one, copy it. I'm going to select this logos frame, paste it here, hit Ctrl V or Command V. It takes up some space, it doesn't matter. While it's selected, I'm going to click on absolute position. Now it's no longer taking up any space, and I'm going to align it to the left. You can just resize it as well. I'm going to set its height to 80, and while it's selected, let's make it a little bit bigger, like that, and also make sure that it gradually fades away. Alright, so this is going to be our left gradient. Now I'm going to have this gradient on the right side as well. So I'm going to duplicate it, flip it horizontally like this, align it to the right side, and make sure that the constraints are set to right and top. Now everything should work properly. Let's give it a try and see whether it works or not. I'm going to select our desktop, and I'm gonna try to shrink this screen. Alright, so we have a problem. Since we put these lines inside another frame, we need to go ahead and select this frame, lines, and just change its constraints to scale and top. Now it should work properly. I'm gonna select the desktop frame and just try to shrink it. Alright, there we go. Here is our integration section. You see how cool it is? Here we have a tiny problem. If I just zoom in, you see this gradient, it's not fading out gradually. So I'm going to select this gradient on the left, and I'm just going to customize it a little bit like this. And now it fades out gradually. Once again, select the desktop frame and give it a try. And we are basically done. I'm going to set the width to 1440, and the integration section is ready. I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to design the testimonial section together. So let's dive in. First of all, let's select the desktop frame and let's just increase its height like this. And now let's analyze our wireframe. So here, as usual, we have a few text layers, and then right underneath, we have a grid of cards. For this project, I'm going to create a masonry grid. If you don't know what a masonry grid is, let me show you a good example. If I go to unsplash.com, here as you can see, we have a grid of images. This is called a masonry grid. As you can see here, we have different images with different dimensions, basically with different heights. The width is the same, but the height is different. So for these testimonial cards, I'm gonna make a masonry grid. So each card would have a different height. I think it would be cool, especially if it's going to be animated later. Alright, so first I'm going to select this section, this feature section. I'm going to duplicate it, bring it down, and put it right below the integration section. I'm going to place it right here, and let me rename it to testimonials. This testimonial section should also have a very light gray background to be separated from this integration section with this white background. Now let me just select this desktop and just increase its height a bit. And let's see what we need. Here right at the top, we need to have all these elements. We just need to modify the content. So I'm gonna select this supporting text right here, and let's change it to testimonials. Next, I'm gonna change the headline to loved by builders, and I'm gonna change the description as well. Alright, the top container is ready, so let me collapse it. Now we need to go ahead and create our card grid. So here I'm going to get rid of these rows. Basically what we are going to create is 3 columns of cards. But why not creating rows? Because as I said, the height of these cards should be adjustable, but the width should stay intact. That's why I'm going to put them inside a column instead of a row. So the width will be intact, but the height will be adjustable. So here I'm going to create a card. You know what? We can simply select one of these cards, maybe this one, because I'm going to use the exact same styling to keep everything consistent. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it inside this content frame. Hit Ctrl V or Command V. The name is card, which is good. Now let's remove this content frame inside. We don't need this screenshot. The padding looks good, but here we need to change the structure. Here we need to have a profile image, the name, the job title, and then we need to have the testimonial text. So here, let's create that profile image. For that, you know what to do. You just need to create a frame. We can simply get rid of these two text layers. And now I'm going to create a frame. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard, hold down the Shift key, and create a perfect square. I'm going to set its width and height to 52 by 52. And let's add a fill to it for now. Later we will replace it with an image. So I'm going to add a gray 100 to it, like that. And also let's double this value. I'm going to type 52 times 2 to make it circular. All right, we have our image placeholder. Let me rename it to profile image. Now we need to create the text layers. I'm going to hit T on my keyboard, create a text layer here, and just type something. Let's type Jenny Wilson. All right, good. I'm going to make it smaller. It's way too big. I'm going to change its text style to text large semi-bold. And also its color should be gray 900. So I'm going to change its color to gray 900. And now we need to duplicate it. Hit Ctrl D or Command D. And this is going to be our job title. So here let's type product manager, comma, the company name. Let's type circle. And this one should be a little bit smaller. So I'm going to change its text style to text medium, like this. And then I'm going to change its color to gray 400, like this. And now we need to put them inside a frame. So I'm going to select them both, hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame, change the direction to vertical, and I'm going to rename it to text and supporting text, like this. But what about the spacing between these two items? As you can see, it's set to 8 and it's too much, isn't it? If I set it to 4, let's see what we get. It's fine, but I think it's still too much. You know what? We can set it to 0. Yes, you heard it right. Sometimes we don't need any space at all because our text layers have some breathing room around the letters actually. All right, now we need to select this text and supporting text frame, hold down the Shift key and select this profile image placeholder and put them inside another frame. I'm going to hit Shift and A and just rename this frame to profile and text. And I'm going to set the spacing to 12. All right, cool. The top part is ready. Now we need the testimonial text. So I'm going to create another text layer here and I'm going to paste a testimonial I already prepared. There it is. I'm going to change its color to gray 900. And also we need to change its resizing option here to fill container. And then we need to select our card and just change its direction to vertical. And finally, move this profile and text frame up. Now I'm going to select this text and align it to the left. Make sure to left align everything. And now we need to select the card and set the spacing between these two elements, between this frame and this paragraph. So here I'm going to set it to 24, but as you can see, this testimonial card is too big. So now it's time to change the vertical resizing option from fixed to hog content. All right, cool. Our first card is ready. Now I'm going to select it and duplicate it. Hit Ctrl D or Command D and duplicate it like this 2 times. And now I'm going to select these 3 cards and put them inside another frame, which is going to be our first column. So I'm going to hit Shift and A, just rename this frame to column and make sure that the spacing between the items inside is set to 32. Now while this column is selected, I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. I'm going to duplicate it twice. However, these columns should sit next to each other. So we need to select this content frame and we need to change the direction to horizontal, just like that. All right, so far so good, but there is a problem. As you can see, some of these cards are cut off. So we need to fix that. I'm sure you know why it's happening. We need to select this content frame, hit enter to select all the child items and just change the resizing options here to fill container like this. While these columns are selected, I'm going to hit enter to select all the cards inside these columns and set their width to fill container. And now we are basically done. I'm going to collapse these frames here in the layers list. So as I said, these cards should be vertically adjustable. So if I change the content of these cards, like the testimonial text, the height of these cards should be changed. So now I'm going to copy and paste another testimonial to to see whether it works or not. All right, let's paste it here. I'm gonna hit Control V or Command V. There we go. Can you see that? It pushed the other card down, and this card is also responsive. Now let me change the content of other cards. I'm gonna paste it here, and I'm also gonna change this one, and let's copy this one and paste it for this card as well. I think it looks good. Obviously, these are not real testimonials, so you can just change the content however you want. Now we need to go ahead and replace these profile image placeholders with real images. So I'm going to select all these profile image frames. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and Control or Command key on my keyboard and just left click on all these profile images like that. Select them all. Now I'm going to run the Content Real plugin. I'm going to go to Image, and here I'm going to click on this library and hit Apply All. Just like that, we have random images, which is cool. We can also change all these names. You can just select them all. Now head over to the Text tab, and from here just look for full name first last, and just like this, all these names are randomized. I'm not going to change the job title here. You can go ahead and change them. But now let's see whether everything is responsive or not. I'm going to select the desktop frame and I'm going to try to shrink it. You see that everything is fully responsive, but here we have a problem. If I try to shrink it too much, you see the name and the job title will go outside the boundary of this card, which is not good. The reason it happens is because we forgot to do something. Let me set the width to 1440 again. Now I'm going to select all these text layers, the name and the job title. And here, as you can see, the resizing option is set to hog. I'm going to set it to fill container, align everything to the left. Now I'm going to select this text frame. And here, as you can see, we have a fixed resizing option. I'm going to set it to fill container. And then I'm going to select this profile and text frame and set it to fill container. Just like that. And I'm going to repeat the same thing for all these cards. All right, we are done. Now let me see whether they are responsive or not. I'm going to try to shrink it. And as you can see, now these cards are not going outside the boundary of this card. And here we will get 2 lines of text instead of 1 line of text if we shrink it too much. But before we wrap up this video, I'd like to add a gradient to the bottom of these cards to make them fade out, like what we did with the integrations logos. I think it would be quite cool. So here I'm going to collapse all these frames. Let me just hold down the Control key on my keyboard and left click here. And I'm going to select this content frame and just draw a frame inside. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard, draw a frame like this. Make sure that this frame is inside your content frame. I'm going to cut it and select this content frame, hit Control V or Command V. Don't worry about it, it's because this frame is taking up space. If we just click on this absolute position, as you can see, it no longer takes up any space. Now I'm going to increase its width like that. Let's align it to the bottom and just add a fill to it. This one should be gray, so I'm going to use this eyedropper to pick the background color, and I'm going to go to linear, and here I'm going to change the place of these 2 colors like this, and just like that we get our desired result. I think it's pretty cool, isn't it? To make it responsive, make sure to select this frame. I'm gonna rename it to gradient and just change its constraints to left and right and bottom. Now I'm gonna zoom in here to see whether it gradually fades out or not. I think it's fine. If you want, you can just customize it a little bit more like this. And now it fades out gradually and we'll not see a sharp line there. All right, once again, let's see whether everything works or not. I'm going to select the desktop frame and try to shrink it. As you can see, everything is responsive. So our testimonial section is also done. Welcome back. In this video, we are going to start designing the FAQ section together. So let's dive in. First of all, let's select the desktop frame, and as usual, we just need to increase its height, just like this. And now let's see what we need. As usual, we need to have one title, one subtitle, and here we need to have a few FAQ items. The way I'm going to structure it is like other sections. We need to have one large section. Inside, we need to have two different containers, one for the top content, one for these FAQ items. And as for the items, I'm going to place these two texts inside one frame, inside one auto layout frame, and then put that frame and the icon frame inside another auto layout frame. So let's get started. First of all, we need to have that section. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this section. I'm going to duplicate this testimonial section, hit Ctrl D or Command D, and just bring it down here. I'm going to get rid of the background. It should be white. And I'm going to rename it to FAQ. For this FAQ section, we don't need this supporting text according to our wireframe. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to select this supporting text and just remove it. And then I'm going to change the content here. Here I'm going to type frequently asked questions. And here I'm going to type everything you need to know about polio. Alright, the top content is ready. Now we need to head over to the next container. Right here we have a few columns. We are going to get rid of them. We don't need them. And inside this content frame, we need to create our FAQ items. So let's start by creating a text layer. I'm going to hit T on my keyboard and create a text layer here. And I'm just going to type a simple question like, is there a free trial available? All right, great. Now I'm going to change its text style. I'm going to use text large, this one, and it should be semi-bold since it's the question. Now I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. And here we need to have the answer. I'm going to paste the answer here. There it is. Now I'm going to select this description, or let's say the subtitle here, and just change its text style. I'm going to use text medium, and for that I'm going to use the medium weight as well. And also the color is going to be gray 400. And we forgot to change the color of this question, so I'm going to select this text layer and just change its color to gray 900, like that. Now we need to stack them vertically. So I'm going to select them both, hold down the Shift key to select them both, and hit Shift and A to add auto layout to them. And as usual, we need to change the direction here to vertical, and let's rename this frame to text and supporting text. All right, cool. Now I'm going to select this text and supporting text frame and just decrease its vertical spacing between items to 8, like this. And while it's selected, I'm going to hit Enter to select the child items and just change their horizontal resizing option to fill container. All right, so far so good. Now we need to place the icon here as well. So I'm going to go to resources, and from components, I'm just going to look for a plus and minus icon. So I'm just going to type minus. There it is. Here we have minus circle. I'm going to drag it and drop it inside. Make sure to put it inside the content frame. It's placed outside the boundary of this frame. That's fine. We are going to fix that. Now I'm going to select this icon, hold down the Shift key and select this text and supporting frame and add auto layout to them. Hit Shift and A. And I'm going to call this frame FAQ item. Here the resizing option is set to high. I'm going to set it to fill container for now, but we need to change it later. Now I'm going to select this text and supporting text frame and change its horizontal resizing option to fill container. And as you can see, now the icon is visible. Let's set the spacing between these two elements to 24. I mean the text and supporting text frame and this icon. So I'm going to select the FAQ item frame, and I'm just going to decrease the spacing between them to 24. And we need to make sure that everything is aligned to the top. So this is going to be our first FAQ item. Now I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to hit Ctrl D or Command D. Let me select the content frame and just change the direction to vertical. And I'm going to set the spacing between them to 24. Now for this FAQ item, we need to get rid of the answer, okay? Because these FAQ items should be interactive. So when the user clicks on one of them, it should expand, and when the user clicks on it again, it should collapse. So here, I'm going to select the text inside this description, and I'm just going to remove it. Now I'm going to select this icon, this instance of our component. And from here, I'm going to swap this instance with something else. We need a plus icon now. Let's see if we can find it here. We have this one, but I prefer the plus icon to be placed inside a circle like this to keep everything consistent. There it is. Here we have this add circle icon. So I'm gonna replace it with that. And now I'm gonna change this question to something else. Maybe, can I change my plan later? And also, I'm gonna select this FAQ item, the second one, and align everything to the center, like this. Alright, so far so good, but we need one more thing. We need to add a divider to this FAQ item right here. We can do it in two ways. We can either add a divider frame inside this frame and make it responsive. It's fine and easy. Alternatively, we can add a stroke to it. I think the stroke option is much easier to do. I'm gonna go with the stroke option. So while this second FAQ item is selected, I'm gonna head over to the stroke section, and from here, I'm gonna add a gray 200 stroke to it, like this. But I want the stroke to only be added to the top side, not the other sides. So I'm gonna click on this little icon and just add it to top. Just like that, we have our divider. Now we need to add some top padding to this text. Why? Because here, for this content frame, we use this 24 pixel value as for our vertical space between items. And here, we don't have any space between this text and this line. So let's fix that. I'm gonna select this FAQ item and just set its vertical padding to 24, but I only want it to be added to the top of this text. So I'm gonna click on this and I'm gonna set the bottom padding to 0. Just like this, our second item is ready. And now if I select this second item and I duplicate it, look what we've got. Everything looks great. Now I'm gonna change the content here. I'm gonna change these questions. All right, now all these FAQ items are ready. There is one thing we missed here. We forgot to change the color of these icons. So I'm gonna select them all. I'm gonna hold down the Shift key and just double click on them one by one. And here, as you can see, it's set to base black. I'm gonna change the color to gray 900. Okay, our FAQ section is almost ready, but I'm gonna make it even better. At the moment, as you can see, all these FAQ items are taking up the whole available width within their parent container. And that's expectable because we set their horizontal resizing option to fill container. However, since here we have a long paragraph, and for these questions we usually have a long paragraph, it's better to use a fixed width for this section, and it's better to make it not responsive. How can we do that? Well, one way is like this. We can select this content frame and we can just add some padding around it to push the content towards the center, like what we did with this description for all these sections. However, it comes with one disadvantage. If we use this method and we select this desktop frame and we try to shrink it, look what happens. You see, as soon as we shrink this frame, all these FAQ items start shrinking. And that's not what we want, because we want to maintain an optimal line length, right? So it's better to make it not responsive and just keep everything fixed right at the center. So how can we do this? It's quite simple. I'm gonna undo it. Instead of adding some padding to this content frame, I'm gonna select all these FAQ items. So just select the content frame, hit enter to select the child elements. And here, I'm gonna set the resizing option to fixed width. And then we can simply decrease their width, just like that. So let me select this content frame and align everything to the center. And again, select the FAQ items. I'm gonna set it to something like 628, which is also divisible by 4. Now, if we select our desktop frame and we try to shrink it, look what happens. You see, all these FAQ items stay right here at the center, and that's exactly what we needed. Okay, before we wrap up this video, I'm gonna go ahead and create this CTA section as well. It's quite easy since we already designed it. I'm gonna select this CTA section. I'm gonna duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, and just bring it down here. I'm gonna place it right underneath this FAQ section. And the only thing we need to change here is the background color. I'm gonna add a fill to it, and it should be gray 25. All right, this CTA section is also done, and I'll see you in the next video. Welcome back! In this video, we are going to start designing the footer section, which is the last section of this landing page. So as usual, let's analyze our wireframe first. Let's see what we need for this footer section. Well, as you can see, we need to create a section. Inside, we need to have a few columns of links, all right? 5 columns of links. And in each column, we need to have a link header, which is going to be bold. And then we need to have a few links underneath. The header is going to categorize these links, and right under these columns, we need to place the company's logo and also the copyright disclaimer on the right side. So I think we can just create two containers like what we did in most of our sections, for example here. And then we can put all these columns inside the top container and these two elements inside the bottom container. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, let me select the desktop frame and just increase its height to make some room like this. And now I'm going to select one of these sections, maybe the FAQ section. I'm going to duplicate it, move it down and just place it right under this CTA section. Now I'm going to rename this to footer and I'm going to remove the content inside. So here I'm going to get rid of the content inside these FAQ items. I'm going to select them all and just remove them. Hit delete on your keyboard. And here as well, I'm going to select these elements and just remove them. Make sure to keep the content frame intact. All right, cool. Now inside this content frame, we need to create our columns. But before we create our columns, let's create our links and then we can put them inside auto layout frames. So I'm going to start by creating a text layer. Just hit T on your keyboard, left click to create a text layer. And here I'm going to type product, which is going to be the header of this column. And I'm going to change its text style. I'm going to change it to text small semi-bold. So here I'm going to look for text small semi-bold, this one. The reason I picked this text style is because these links, these footer links are not that important. That's why I chose text SM, which is a little bit smaller than our base font size, which is 16. All right, so far so good. Now let's change its color to gray 900, like that. And now we can go ahead and create those links. So I'm going to duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. And I'm going to change it to maybe changelog like this. This is going to be our first link. The font size looks good. We just need to change its color to have a better visual hierarchy. If you just take a look at our wireframe, you see here we also define this difference in lightness so that the user can clearly understand that this top text is the header. It's not a link and it's not clickable. So here I'm going to make it a little bit lighter, maybe gray 400 like this. And this is going to be our first link. Now I'm going to duplicate this link a few times like this, and I'm going to change these links. I'm going to change the second one to customer stories. Let's change the next one to security. The next one can be pricing, and the last one can be solutions. Obviously, you need to change these links based on the pages this website needs to have, but at the moment, I'm going to keep these links. Now we need to set the spacing, but how can we set the spacing? Well, you might say that, all right, we can just select these links and also the header and just put them inside an auto layout frame. Well, we can, but that's wrong. Why? Do you know why? I'm sure you do, because these links are very related. So they need to have an even spacing between each other. But these links, this particular section is somehow related to this product header. Okay, therefore we need to increase the spacing between the header and these links just a little bit to let the user know that this is the header, it's not a link. So I'm going to select these links and I'm going to put them inside an auto layout frame. I'm going to hit Shift and A and let's just rename it to links. I'm going to align everything to the left. And I'm going to set the spacing between these links to 12. And now I'm going to select this links frame, hold down the Shift key and select this product header as well, and just put them inside our column. Okay, so I'm going to hit Shift and A again. And here I'm going to rename this frame to column. Let's align everything to the left. And I'm going to increase the spacing to 16. So since we used 12 for these links, I increased it by 4 pixels. That's enough. You don't need to go crazy like 32 or 40. 16 is enough because we also changed the color of this header. All right, so far so good. Before we go ahead and duplicate this column, first we need to set the resizing options for our elements here. While this column is selected, I'm going to hit enter to select the child elements inside. You see, now we selected the header and this links frame. And as you can see, the resizing option is set to hog. I'm going to change it to fill container. And again, let's align everything to the left. Now I'm going to select this links frame and I'm going to hit enter to select the child elements inside. And here, as you can see, all these links have this hog content resizing option. So I'm going to change it to fill container again. Now let's select this column and just duplicate it 4 times. I'm going to hit Ctrl D or Command D, just like this. All right, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now we need to select this content frame and we just need to change the direction of this auto layout. As for the spacing between them, I'm gonna set it to 32 because of our layout grid. If you remember, we set the gutter of our layout grid to 32, but at the moment it doesn't look good because these columns are not taking up the whole available space within their parent container, which is this content frame. So how can we fix that? Well, it's simple. Just select this content frame, hit enter to select all the columns inside, and then change the resizing option from fixed to fill container. And just like this, now all these columns are trying to take up the whole available space within this content frame. And that's exactly what we want, while maintaining this 32 pixel gutter between these columns. Obviously, we can go ahead and change all these links and all these headers, but I'm not going to do that. You know how to change the text. Let's move on to the next section. Now that our top container is ready, let me collapse these frames and let's get into the next container. Here I'm going to select this container, and inside this I'm going to select this content frame. So inside this content frame, we need to put our logo and our copyright disclaimer. So let me go ahead and just select our logo here in the nav bar. I'm going to double click on it and select it here, copy it, and just select the content frame and paste it here. Hit Ctrl V or Command V. What else do we need? We need the copyright disclaimer as well on the right side. I'm going to select one of these links here, maybe this one. I'm going to copy it, hit Ctrl C or Command C, select this content frame again and hit Ctrl V or Command V to paste it here. And let's change this text. For the copyright disclaimer, we usually need the copyright symbol. I'm going to hit Option G on my keyboard to add this copyright symbol. If you're using Windows, I believe the shortcut is Ctrl-Alt-C, but if it doesn't work, you can simply look for the copyright symbol on Google and just copy it from a text and paste it here. It would also work. Okay, here I'm going to type 2023 Polio Ltd, all rights reserved. All right, good. Our copyright disclaimer is also ready. Now we need to make sure that this logo stays on the left side and this text stays on the right side. You know what to do. We just need to put them inside another frame. So I'm going to select them both. I'm going to hit Shift and A to put them inside an auto layout frame. Just rename this frame to footer content, change the direction to horizontal, set the resizing option to fill container, and now we need to head over to the advanced settings here and just change the spacing mode to space between. But here we have a problem, as you can see. That's because here our text layer has a fixed width. So we need to go ahead and change it to hog content, just like that. And it fixes this issue. And now I'm going to select this footer content and just align everything to the center, just like this. Okay, we might say that our footer is ready, but I want to add a divider here between this top container and this bottom container. How can we do that? Well, as I said before, when we were designing this FAQ item, we have 2 ways to create a divider. We can add a border, or let's say a stroke, to our container, or we can just create a divider using a frame. I already showed you how to create it using a stroke, but now I'm going to show you the other method just to make sure that you know both ways, all right? But there is no difference between them. Here inside this content frame, I'm going to draw a frame. I'm going to hit A on my keyboard and just draw a frame just like this. And I'm going to change its color to gray 200. So let's add a fill to it and it should be gray 200 like this. All right, now let's rename it to divider and I'm gonna set its height to 1. The width doesn't matter because we are gonna make it responsive. At the moment it has a fixed width. I'm just going to change its horizontal resizing option to fill container. And now as you can see, it's taking up the whole available width within its parent container, which should be this content frame, but it's not. So let's put it inside this content frame, just like this. Now it looks good. Now I'm going to select this content frame and we need to set this value here. 24 looks good. I'm going to keep it as is. And just like that, our footer is also ready. Now let's go ahead and change our links and see whether it's responsive or not. I'm going to select one of these links. Let's suppose this column is going to have more links than others. I'm going to select this one and I'm going to duplicate it. And let's see how this whole section reacts. Okay, so I'm going to select this one. Let's duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D. As you can see, this section is fully responsive. And the reason it's responsive is because here, this container is hogging the content vertically. So no matter how many links we put inside, it tries to hog the content and it pushes all the content below it down. And that's exactly what we needed. All right, let me undo it. I'm going to hit Ctrl Z or Command Z. And now let's place our footer right here at the bottom of our screen. I'm going to align it to the bottom and we need to set the constraints to bottom, left and right. This way, when we select this desktop frame and we try to adjust its height, this footer will always stay at the bottom of the screen. And that's exactly what we need. All right, let me decrease this frame's height. Just like this, because we need to eliminate any gap between these sections. If you want to do it systematically, you can just select this footer, just measure the margin between these two sections, hold down the Option or Alt key on your keyboard. And here, as you can see, we have a 21 pixel gap in between, right? So now I can select this desktop frame, head over to the frame section, and here I'm going to type -21. And now our home page is ready. Welcome back. Now that our desktop version is ready, it's time to go ahead and design the other breakpoints, the tablet and the mobile breakpoints. But why? Because we need to make sure that our design adapts to different screen sizes. Nowadays, most users use their smartphones to visit a website, or maybe they use their tablets. So it's important for our design to adapt to different screen sizes. But you might say, Arash, didn't we make our design responsive already? Well, not yet, because at the moment our design is fluid. So when I select this desktop frame and I try to resize it, as you can see, everything is percentage based. So this nav bar here, this container takes up a specific percentage of our whole frame. And this percentage is fixed, and it's good because if someone has a screen's width of like 1300 instead of 1400, our design could adapt to it like this. As you can see, since our layout is fluid. But now we need to make sure that it adapts to different devices as well, like tablet and mobile. And for that, sometimes we need to change the entire layout. Sometimes we need to modify some sizes like our text sizes, our image sizes, etc. And that's why we need to design them separately. So as a UI designer, it's your responsibility to provide the developer with at least 3 different versions: the desktop version, the tablet version, and the mobile version. We'll talk about another version in the upcoming videos, but let's start with the mobile and the tablet versions. Alright, before we start, I'm going to set the width to 1440, and I'm going to make a small change to this hero section. Here, if I select this content frame, if I head over to the fill section, here as you can see, this option is set to fill. That's why when I try to shrink this frame, the image inside is going to be masked, and that's not good. So to fix that, we can just select this content frame and just change this option from fill to fit. And now look what happens. You see that now it scales down and it's better because we want to make sure that all these elements are visible no matter what the screen size is. So make sure to change this little option here. And now what do we need? We need our wireframes. But should we start with the tablet version or the mobile version? You might think that it's logical to go to the tablet version after the desktop version, but in my opinion and based on my experience, it's better to jump into the mobile version first and then try to design the tablet version. And the reason is a lot of times we change the entire layout of our design for the mobile version, but the tablet version will be quite similar to the mobile version. So if we just make everything responsive in the mobile version and we just scale everything down or make some changes to our text layers, to our layout, then it would be much easier to adapt it to the tablet version as well. That's my recommendation, but in my opinion, it's better to go from desktop to mobile and then jump into the tablet version. All right, so here I'm gonna select this mobile version on the wireframe page. I'm gonna copy it, head over to the workspace and just paste it right next to our desktop wireframe. So I'm gonna move it to the right and just paste it here. And I'm gonna align it with this wireframe. All right, what next? Well, I'm gonna select this desktop frame and I'm gonna duplicate it now. I'm gonna hit Ctrl D or Command D to duplicate it. And then I'm gonna rename it to Homepage Mobile like this. And I'm gonna rename this one to Homepage Desktop. All right, now we need to go ahead and make some changes to this main screen, right? First, we need to change its width. So if you remember when we were creating our layout grids, I mentioned that I prefer to use 375 pixels for my mobile width. Therefore, I'm going to select this homepage mobile frame and just change its width to 375, just like that. And as you can see, everything is disorganized. And that's fine, don't be scared. It's because we need to go ahead and make some changes to our container and also to our margins. We need to change the layout grid. At the moment, we are using the desktop grid, which is not good. So don't worry about it. Everything will be fixed. All right, first of all, let's change our layout grid here. We need to change it to mobile, just like this. And now we need to select all our sections and change the margin we set for those sections. If you remember, for the desktop version, we set the margin to 150, but for the mobile version, it should be 16. So I'm going to select this home page and I'm going to hit enter on my keyboard to select all the sections inside this homepage mobile frame, just like this. Let me collapse everything. Now everything is selected. And here, as you can see, we set the left and right padding to 150. So I'm going to change them to 16 and 16. And just like that, now we have more space to work with because our container can take up more space within the parent container. All right, now let's see what should be changed. Let me just move this mobile wireframe right here. It would be much easier. Later, we will reorganize everything. According to our wireframe, for the mobile version, we don't need to have these buttons because we don't have the luxury of space when it comes to the mobile version. Therefore, we need to eliminate these buttons and also we need to get rid of all the menu items. So I'm going to select the nav bar and I'm going to head over to the content frame here. And inside, I'm going to select this menu items frame and just remove them. Just like this, we don't need them. I also want to select this buttons frame and just remove it like that. And now inside, we only have one logo. So on the right side, however, we need to place one icon, the hamburger menu icon. All right, so I'm going to head over to the resources section. And from here in the components, I'm going to look for menu and I'm going to pick this one. Let's drag it and drop it inside this container, inside this content frame. First of all, let me change its color to gray 900 like this. And you might say that, all right, we are done. But that's wrong. I've seen many designers make this mistake. They say that, all right, I placed this icon here, the spacing is consistent, and it's also perfectly aligned with this layout grid. But that's wrong. You know why? Because here we are designing the mobile version, and this element is actionable. Therefore, the user can interact with it, right? Using his or her fingertip. So we need to make sure that the user can easily touch this icon. We need to define a safe area around this icon, a safe touch area. It's recommended to have a 44 by 44 pixel touch area around your actionable elements. So you know what? Now I'm going to put it inside another frame. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to click on frame selection, just like this. We put it inside another frame and I'm just going to change its name to menu. Like this. And I can also add auto layout to it. It's not necessary, but I'm gonna do it anyway. We cannot make it responsive or something like that, but I prefer to have it inside an auto layout frame since I can easily align it here. Alright, now we need to change the resizing options to fixed width and fixed height. And I'm gonna set the width and height to 44 and 44, just like this. So we created this 44 by 44 pixel safe area, the touch area. And now this icon should be aligned at the center of this touch area. So here using the auto layout settings, I'm going to align it to the center, just like this. Now, as you can see, this icon is no longer aligned with our layout grid. And you might say that it's wrong, but it's not. It should be this way because we need to have this safe touch area around it. Otherwise, our design wouldn't be accessible and our users will have a difficult time touching it. So make sure to always keep this point in mind. All right, our nav bar is ready. Now we can move on to the hero section. So let's see what we have here. First of all, I'm going to select this hero section and I'm going to change its top padding. We set it to 96 for the desktop version because we had so much space. But on mobile, we usually don't want the user to scroll so much. Therefore, we need to save some space. So I'm going to decrease this value here. And also we need to decrease it for all other sections. So I'm going to select this and I'm going to decrease the top padding to 64. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and select all the other sections because we need to change the vertical padding of all of them. I'm going to select them all. And here I'm going to set the vertical padding to 64, just like this, to not forget it. Here I'm going to expand this hero frame and I'm going to go to the content frame. Here we have this heading and supporting text frame. The headline looks good, but I think it's a little bit big for the mobile version. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Therefore, I'm going to change its text style from display large bold to display medium bold. Just like this. I think it looks much better now. What about the supporting text? Well, if you remember, we put the supporting text inside another frame to just add some padding around it and make sure that it has an optimal width. But we don't need it for the mobile version. So I'm going to select this supporting text frame and I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to click on ungroup like that because we no longer need that frame. Now we need to change its resizing options. I'm going to set its horizontal resizing option to fill container like this and its vertical resizing option to hog content. And as you can see, now it looks good. But what about the size? I think we need to decrease its font size. I'm going to change the text size from text XL medium to text large medium like this. And now our container looks amazing. But what about these two buttons? Well, we could leave them as is, but usually for mobile, it's better to make sure that your buttons take up the whole available space within their parent container. That's also the case on mobile applications. You see that the buttons usually take up the whole available width. You see that usually the buttons take up the whole available width, making it easier for the user to touch them. So to make them take up the whole available width here, we need to select this buttons frame. We need to change its resizing option to fill container. Then we need to hit enter to select the buttons inside. And while these two buttons are selected, change the resizing option to fill container and align everything to the center, just like that. All right, but here we have a problem that I forgot to fix. Here we shouldn't have this sign in text. Instead, we need to have demo like this. And let's fix it for our home page as well. I'm going to change it here to demo. Now let's move on to the next container, which includes this image. Well, here we need to select this container and let's analyze its resizing options. It's set to fill and hog. It's good. So we need to select this content inside. And here, as you can see, it has a fixed width, which is good, but we need to decrease it because we set it to this value for the desktop version. So I'm going to decrease it to something around 240 like this. All right, everything looks good now. Now let's see whether it's fluid or not. I'm going to select this mobile frame and I'm going to change its width like this. As you can see, everything is fluid. All right, now it's time to move on to the next section, which is the social proof section. So let's see what we have here. I'm going to select this social proof, move it up. We already changed the padding. That's good. But we need to change the layout according to our wireframe, right? So what I'm going to do here is create 3 different rows, and in each row we are going to place these logos. But we cannot place them like what we have here. We cannot just put these logos inside a frame. Basically, we need to create a wrapper around our logo and then put those wrappers inside our rows. And I'm going to show you why. So first, I'm going to select these logos and just put them inside an auto layout frame one by one. I'm going to select this one, hit Shift and A, select this one, hit Shift and A, and put them inside an auto layout frame one by one. Now I'm going to select a pair of logos like these two. I'm going to select them both, hit Shift and A to put them inside another frame and just call it row like this. And I'm going to change the auto layout direction to horizontal. Let's do the same thing here for these two. I'm going to select them both, hit Shift and A, call it row, and just change the direction to horizontal. But here we have one logo left. And that's why I said we need this logo, maybe this Nike logo here for the mobile version. So let's go ahead and copy it and paste it here inside our logos frame. Hit Shift and A to put it inside an auto layout frame. And now I'm going to select these two. Again, hit Shift and A to put them inside a row frame. Let me just call it row and just change the direction to horizontal. All right, cool. Now we have 3 different rows. Now we can select this logos frame, and since we need them to stack vertically, we need to change the direction to vertical, just like that. As for the spacing between these rows, I'm gonna set it to 24 since they are quite related. But here we have an issue. As you can see, these logos are not taking up the whole available space within their parent container. And that's basically why I put them inside a wrapper, these auto layout frames. You know what? Let me just go ahead and rename these wrappers. I'm going to call it logo wrap. I'm going to copy it and just paste it for all these logo wraps. This way we can make sure that everything is organized and you truly understand what's going on. All right, now we need to select these rows. I'm going to select these rows and I'm going to change the resizing option from hog to fill container, just like this. Now, while they are selected, I'm going to change this value, the horizontal space between items, to 16 to have a 16 pixel margin in between. And now I'm going to hit enter again to select all these logo wraps. And we need to set their horizontal resizing option to fill container, just like this, and align everything to the center. And we are good to go. Let me collapse these frames and select our homepage mobile frame. And let's see whether it's fluid or not. There we go. As you can see, it works smoothly and as expected. So that's why I put these logos inside a wrapper, because I wanted to make sure that inside this row, we have 2 containers with the same size. Since each logo here has a specific width, for example, this Amazon logo has this width 106, this FedEx logo has this width 104, it would be quite hard to make them responsive. But this way, when we put them inside a logo wrap and all these logo wrappers have the same width, we can easily make our design responsive. So keep this structure in mind, it would be quite helpful sometimes. And now our social proof section is also ready. We just need to make sure we don't have any gap in between, so I'm gonna move it up. Just like this. And it's time to head over to the next section now. So the next section is the features section. Let's see what we need to have. Well, obviously we need to change the size of our text, and also we need to change the layout entirely. First, I'm going to select this features section, move it up a little bit like that. And let's start with the top container. Here we have 2 containers. I'm going to open up these frames and I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to select this heading and supporting frame. And as you can see, it's hugging the content. We need to change its resizing option to fill container like that. While it's selected, I'm going to hit enter to select the child elements and set the resizing option to fill container again. All right, here we have a problem. I believe it's because of this padding we set for this heading and description frame, We just need to select it and just remove it, just like this. Now everything looks good. Now let's go ahead and change the text styles. I'm going to select this supporting text and I'm going to change its text style to text small, bold, like this. Next, I'm going to select the heading and I'm going to change it to display small instead of display medium. And finally, the description, I'm going to change it to text large instead of text X large. All right, the top container is ready. Now let's move on to this container. So here for the desktop version, we created 2 rows. We don't need any rows here for the mobile version. So I'm just going to get rid of this one, remove it. Then I'm going to select this row, right click on it and just click on ungroup. And now we have 3 features. First of all, while they are selected, I'm going to change the horizontal resizing option to fill container like this. And the vertical resizing option should be hog content. And now everything is fixed. Since we are on the mobile breakpoint, it makes sense to decrease this value a little bit to save some space. As I said, we don't want our users to scroll so much. So while these features are selected, I'm going to decrease this value to 16. And also I'm going to select the content frame and just decrease this value to 40 instead of 64. Like this. All right, now we need 3 more features. So I'm going to select one of them, this one, and I'm going to duplicate it just like this. And our features section is ready. Let me just check the responsiveness. I'm going to select this main frame and try to adjust the width. As you can see, everything is fluid and responsive. Now we can move on to the next section, which is this CTA section. So here we have the content overlapping. We need to fix that. I'm going to select this mobile screen and just increase its height like this. And I'm just going to move these sections down a little bit. So I'm going to select the second features section, which is this one, and just move it down like this. And now I'm going to select the CTA section and let's start working on it. I'm going to move it down a little bit like this. I'm going to hit enter to select the container. Everything looks good here. I'm going to hit enter again to select the content frame and hit enter again to select the elements inside. All right, here we need to select these 2 frames and change the resizing option to fill container. Now I'm going to hit enter again to select all the elements inside and change the resizing option to fill container again. And now let's select this frame, hit enter to select this text inside and set it to fill container. And again, here we are facing this issue. That's because of this padding we added to this frame. So I'm going to select this heading and description frame and just get rid of this padding. All right, now we can see that everything is taking the right place. We just need to align these buttons. I'm going to select them both and align everything to the center. And also we need to change the size of these texts. I'm going to select this headline and just change it to display small, bold. Now I'm going to select the description and this one is going to be text large, medium, and everything else looks good. So our CTA section is also ready. Now I'm going to select this mobile frame and just try to shrink it to see whether it's fluid or not. Yeah, it works perfectly. I'm going to set the width to 375 again. But before we move on to the next section, I'm going to make a slight adjustment here. Here, as you can see, we have this one word left alone. As I mentioned before, it's not good to have one word left alone. When it comes to typography, it's better to change this text. So you know what? I'm just going to add one more word here. Let's say start your 30-day free trial today. Now it looks much better. All right, now let's move on to the next section, which is our second feature section. So here it is. I'm going to move it up. And again, we need to start with the top container. So I'm just going to double click on it, hit enter, again hit enter. Now while this heading and description frame is selected, I'm going to get rid of this padding. I'm going to set it to 0, just like this. I'm going to hit enter again to select these text and this frame. Change the resizing option to fill container. Now I'm going to select this frame, heading and supporting text frame. Hit enter to select the text inside. Change the resizing option to fill container. And now we need to change their sizes. So I'm going to select this one, the supporting text, and just change it to text small, bold. And now let's select this one and change its text style to display small, bold. What about the description? It should be text large, medium. All right, the top container is ready. Now let's move on to our bottom container. So here we need to change the layout entirely. So instead of having 2 rows of cards, we just need to have these cards stack vertically. So you know what? I'm just gonna get rid of one of these rows, maybe this bottom one, just remove it. And then I'm gonna select this row, right click on it, and just ungroup it. Now I'm gonna select these 2 cards and just change their width to fill container, and their height should be fixed. All right, here as you can see, one of them is completely gone because of its height. So we need to change its height to 498, just like what we have here for this card. I'm gonna select it and set its height to fixed height and change it to 498. Now, what about the spacing between these cards? I'm gonna select my content frame, and here as you can see it's set to 32. It's fine, I'm gonna keep it as is. Now let's go ahead and modify the spacing within these cards. As you can see here, this text, this description is masked by this large image. So I'm gonna select this content frame inside our card and move it down using the arrow keys, and just make sure to maintain a top 24 pixel margin. So I'm gonna move it down like that. The reason I decreased it to 24 is because here we don't have that much space, and the same thing applies here. I'm gonna select this image and just move it up to maintain a 24 pixel top margin. And now we need to duplicate these cards. I'm gonna duplicate this one, the top one, and here in the layers list, I'm gonna move it down and put it below the second card. Now I'm gonna duplicate this one and put it below the third card, just like this. All right, so far so good. Now let's see whether everything works or not. We just need to move this testimonials section down to see everything clearly. Okay, everything looks good. I'm gonna select this frame and adjust its width. Perfect. As you can see, it's fluid and everything works as expected. Now it's time to move on to the integration section. So I'm gonna move this testimonial section down like this. Don't worry about its placement, we will adjust it later anyway. And I'm gonna move the integration section, let me find it here. I'm gonna move it down like this. And we should basically repeat the same thing. We need to start with the top container with the top content, and then we need to head over to the next container. So let's get started. I'm gonna hit enter, then I'm gonna select this container, hit enter, again hit enter. First here, while this heading and description frame is selected, just get rid of this padding, set it to 0. We don't need that. I'm gonna hit enter to select the child items, change the resizing options to fill container. Now I'm gonna select this heading and supporting text frame, hit enter, change the resizing option to fill container. And now you know what to do. You just need to select these texts and change their size. So the supporting text should be changed to text small bold, like this. The headline should be changed to display small bold, like this. And the description should be changed to text large medium, this one. Now we can move to the next container. So let me collapse this container and I'm gonna expand this one. So let's see what we have here. Here we have the logo and lines and everything is basically gone. So I'm gonna start with the logo. I'm gonna select the logo. It's way too big for the mobile version, so I'm gonna scale it down. I'm gonna select it, hit K on my keyboard to select the scale tool and just change its height to 64. What about the lines? Where are they? They are gone. So here I'm gonna select this logo and lines and I'm just gonna get rid of this padding. We don't need that. I'm gonna set it to 0. And now as you can see, our lines appear, but we have too many of them. For the mobile version, we need to get rid of these logos, a few of them basically. So let's see how many of them we can keep. Maybe 6. 6 would be fine, although in our wireframe we have 4, but it doesn't matter. So you know what? I'm gonna just select a few of these logos. Let's select all of them for a second and just change their height. They are way too big. I'm gonna hit K to select the scale tool and just set their height to 48. Alright, looks nice. Now we can get rid of a few of them. I'm just gonna remove like 4 of them. So now in total we have 6. And also we need to remove a few of our lines, right? So let me just expand this lines and gradients frame. and inside we have this lines frame. So I'm just going to remove these side lines. This one, I'm going to remove it. This one, I also want to remove it. We need to get rid of 2 more lines. I'm going to select this one, remove it, and this one, also remove it. So in total, we need to have 6 lines. And now I'm going to select these lines, all of them, inside this lines frame. And I'm going to hold down the Option or Alt key on my keyboard to just scale their width. Okay. All right, something like this looks good. Now let's select our gradients here. They are way too big. I'm gonna make them smaller, just like this. And also this one, let's make it smaller. Make sure that you have the same width for both of them. So this one is 127. This one should also be 127. And the same thing should happen here for these logos. So I'm gonna select it and just select these gradients. Make them smaller like this. I'm going to set the width to 127 and this one 127 as well, and just change its height as well like this. And now our integration section is also ready. We just need to check whether it's fluid or not. So I'm going to select this mobile frame and just try to shrink it, and everything works as expected. Perfect. Now we need to move on to the next section, which is the testimonial section. But before I show you how to do that, I want to give you a challenge. I want you to pause the video and do it by yourself, and then you can just resume the video and see what I'm gonna do. But make sure to pause the video, don't cheat. It's so important to do it yourself to really understand what's going on and to see whether you face some issues or not. If you face some issues, that's good because you can understand your weaknesses and you can work on that and practice that. So please pause the video, go ahead and change the layout of our testimonial section. It should look like this, and then you can play the video again. All right, I'm pretty sure you could handle it. Now I'm going to show you how it's done in case you faced some issues. So just like other sections, we just need to select our testimonial section here. Let me find it. It's placed right here, and I'm going to move it up, and we should place it right under our integration section. Let's move it up like this. As you can see here, we have two sections overlapping each other. So you know what? I'm going to select this FAQ section. I'm going to move it outside this frame. That's fine. I'm going to put it outside. Let's select this CTA section, put it outside as well. We don't need that. All right, here for the testimonial section, we need to start from the top. So I'm going to expand this container and just select this content frame, hit enter to select all the child items. While this heading and description frame is selected, just get rid of this padding. Hit enter to select all the child items, and now change the resizing option to fill container. Now I'm going to select this frame, hit enter to select the child items, and just change the resizing option to fill container. All right, now let's go ahead and change their sizes. I'm going to select this one. It should be changed to text small bold. This one should be changed to display small bold. And this one should be changed to text large medium. Okay, great. The top content is ready. What about this container? Well, here we need to get rid of a few testimonials, and also we don't need any columns. So I'm going to select these two columns, just remove them. Now here we have one column of testimonials. We can keep this column or we can just ungroup it. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to keep this column here. The gradient also looks good. Now let's see whether everything is responsive or not. I'm going to select the mobile frame and just try to adjust its width. Yeah, everything works perfectly. Okay, now let's move on to the next section, which is the FAQ section. So we place it outside. Now we need to bring it back. I'm gonna move it inside this frame like this. And let's place it right under the testimonial section. All right, now we need to repeat the same thing again and again. We just need to hit enter, select this top container, select this content, hit enter again. Now I'm going to get rid of this padding, set it to 0, hit enter again, set the resizing options to fill container. Now I'm going to select this frame, hit enter, set the resizing option of this headline to fill container. and just change its text style to display small bold. All right, now I'm going to select this description and just change its text style to text large medium. Okay, now let's move on to the next container. So let me collapse all these frames. And here, let's see what we have. We have all these FAQ items. I'm going to select this content frame, hit enter to select all these FAQ items. If you remember, we set its width to a fixed value, but for the mobile version, we don't need that. We can just set it to fill container, just like this, and everything is ready now. Okay, our FAQ section is also ready. Now we need to have a CTA section. So you know what? I'm going to get rid of the CTA section here. We don't need that. I'm just going to remove it. And instead, I'm going to copy this one since we changed everything. I'm going to copy it, paste it somewhere. I'm going to just move it down here and place it right underneath this FAQ section. The only thing we need to do here is add a field to it. If you remember, we did it for the desktop version as well. Here, as you can see, we added a field to it. So while it's selected, I'm gonna add a gray 25 to it, like this one. And finally, we need to modify our footer. Our footer should be changed completely. Basically, the layout should be changed. So let's see what we should do. First, let me find it. It's right here. I'm going to select this mobile frame and just decrease its height. It's too long. And let's see how we should change the layout. Well, for the mobile version, we need to have two columns that include these link columns. All right, I'm going to select this container, just hit enter. I'm going to hit enter once again. And here, as you can see, we have these 5 link columns. All right, so what I'm going to do is select 3 of them, because here, this first column includes 3 link columns, and I'm going to put them inside another frame. I'm going to hit Shift and A and just rename it to column and change the direction to vertical to stack them vertically. Now I'm going to select these 2 columns, hit Shift and A to put them inside another column. Let me just rename it to column and change the direction to vertical. And finally, I'm going to select these 2 and change the resizing option to fill container, hit enter to select all the child elements, change the resizing options to fill container again. Now, while all these link columns are selected, I'm going to hit enter again, and I'm going to make sure that the resizing option is set to fill, and it's good, it is. And now our footer section is ready. We just need to select our mobile frame and just increase its height, just like this, and just eliminate the gap between the CTA section and the footer. Here, if I select the footer, as you can see, the top margin is set to 150. So we just need to select this mobile frame and just decrease the height here. I'm going to type -150. And just like that, everything looks good. We just need to make one more change. We need to change the layout of this bottom part. It's quite simple. We just need to select this footer content frame and change the direction to vertical like this. And we shouldn't change anything else. All right, great. Our mobile breakpoint is ready. Let me go ahead and just hide the layout grid and just check everything. I'm gonna check the responsiveness of my footer and everything is fluid. That's amazing. So now it's time to move on to the tablet breakpoint. I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. In this video, we are gonna start working on the tablet breakpoint. So let's dive in. First of all, let me go to the wireframe page, and from here, I'm going to select the tablet wireframe. I'm going to copy it, hit Ctrl+C or Command+C, and just paste it in the workspace page, right next to the desktop breakpoint. I'm just going to paste it here, and let's place it right there. And I'm going to move these 2 mobile versions to the right side. All right, let's see what we need to do. Here, as you can see, the layout of our tablet version is quite similar to the mobile version. And that's why I said it's better to design the mobile version, which is smaller, first, and then convert it to the tablet version. So let's start. First, I'm going to duplicate this homepage mobile version. I'm going to hit Ctrl+D or Command-D, bring it over here. Let me rename it to tablet. And now I'm going to change its width to 744. And now as you can see, everything looks good already. We just need to adjust a few things. You see, everything is responsive, nothing is messed up. We just need to change the gap between these sections and modify a few things here and there. All right, the first thing we need to do is change the grid. Here I'm going to change the grid to tablet, and obviously we need to change the padding of all our sections. Therefore, while this homepage tablet is selected, I'm going to hit enter to select all the sections inside, as you can see, just like this. And here I'm going to change the left and right padding to 32, like this, to make sure that our containers are aligned perfectly with our layout grid. It already looks awesome. Now I'm going to select this content frame within our hero section, and I'm going to increase its height. I'm going to increase it to somewhere around 450, like this. Yeah, something like this looks good. And obviously now we need to push all these sections down. So I'm going to select this tablet frame and just increase its height a little bit, like this. And then I'm going to select all these sections. I'm going to move them down like this. Make sure there is no gap between these sections. Okay, cool. Our hero section is almost ready, but there is one more thing we need to change. Since here we have a larger width than the mobile version, it's recommended not to use these big buttons. It's better to make them hug the content inside. I'm going to select the buttons frame here, and I'm going to change the resizing option here to hug content. Now I'm going to hit enter to select the child elements inside and change the resizing options to hug content. And now our hero section is ready. Now let's move on to the social proof section. Here we just need to change the layout a little bit. So let me collapse these frames, and right here what I'm going to do is select the social proof frame, hit enter to select the container, hit enter again, and here we have the logos frame. Inside this logos frame, if you remember, we created 3 rows, right? 3 rows, and in each row we have 2 logos. So on the tablet breakpoint, what we need to do is create 2 rows, and in each row we need to have 3 logos instead. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to select this bottom row. I'm going to right click on it, ungroup it. Now I'm going to select this logo wrap, put it inside this top row, change its vertical resizing option to hug content like this. And now I'm going to move this logo wrap, this Nike logo, and put it inside the bottom row, just like this. Make sure that the height is set to hug content. And we are almost done. You can obviously modify their order using the arrow keys on your keyboard. Something like this. Let's see whether everything is responsive or not. Yeah, everything looks good. Perfect. Now we can move on to the other sections. What should we do here? Well, we can leave it as is, but we can even make it better. As you can see here, we have these long lines of text, and you know that it's better to keep our text lines shorter. Therefore, we can add some padding to these containers to just make these text lines a little bit shorter. So you know what to do. I'm just going to start with the top one. I'm going to double click on this container, hit enter. Now I'm going to hit enter once again. And once you select this heading and description frame, just add some padding to it. I'm going to set it to 48. Just like this. And as you can see now, it pushes everything towards the center. What about here? We can add the padding to the content frame here, or we can just hit enter once again, select all these features, and just set the padding to 48. Just like that, to keep everything shorter. And now we can move on to the next section. But before we do that, let's go ahead and just eliminate this gap between these 2 sections. I'm going to move it up. And using the arrow keys, I'm going to make sure that there is no gap in between. All right, what about this one? What about the CTA section? I think everything looks good except these 2 buttons. We just need to make sure that they hug the content inside. So I'm just going to select this buttons frame, change the resizing option to hug content, hit enter, select the buttons inside, and change the resizing options to hug content again, and we are done. Now we can move on to the next section, which is the second feature section. So let's move it up a little bit. Let's see what we need to change here. Well, first, let's add some padding to this description. So I'm going to select this heading and description frame and just add a 48 pixel padding, just like this, to keep everything consistent. What about here? For these cards, I'm going to move these images up a little bit since we have more space and set the top margin to 24, like this. And the same thing here. I'm going to move it up like that. And here as well, let's move it up. And finally here as well. And just like that, our second features section is also ready. Let's make sure that there is no gap between these two sections. I'm gonna move it up just like this, and we are done. Now I'm gonna move on to the integration section. I'm gonna move it up here. The first thing I'm gonna do is add some padding to this text. Therefore, I'm going to select this container, hit enter again. And once this heading and description frame is selected, I'm going to add a 48 pixel padding to it. And this bottom part looks good. I'm not going to change anything here. Let's go ahead and modify the testimonial section. I'm going to move it up. Let's see what we need to do. Here we need to have 2 columns of testimonial cards. So what I'm going to do first is add some padding to this text here. I'm going to select this heading and description frame and just set the padding to 48. And now for these cards, I'm going to select all these cards. Okay, here we have 1 column. I'm going to duplicate this column just like this to have 2 columns sitting next to each other. And basically we don't need to do anything else. You can just go ahead and modify the content here. I'm going to just change the content and you'll see that everything is responsive. You see that? We have this responsive masonry grid. I can modify the content here as well a little bit. And our testimonial section is ready. Now let's make sure that there is no gap between these 2 sections. So I'm going to move it up. And let's head over to the FAQ section. I'm going to move it up. For the FAQ section here, I'm not going to change anything because everything looks good. I want all the FAQ items to take up the whole available width, and I'm just going to make sure that there is no gap between these 2 sections. Okay, cool. What about the CTA section? Well, for the CTA section, you know what to do. I'm just going to get rid of it, and let's copy this one. I'm going to duplicate it, in fact, and I'm going to bring it down here. Let's place it right here. Let's align it to the center. I'm going to make sure that there is no gap in between. However, make sure to set the constraints back to left and right because when you move these sections outside the main frame, their constraints will be changed. Therefore, when you move them back, set the constraints again, and we just need to add a fill to it. So while it's selected, let's add a gray 25 to it, and we can just move on to the footer now. So as for the footer, I'm going to select this homepage tablet frame and just decrease its height like this. Basically here, the only thing we need to change is the layout of this bottom part, okay? We need to change it back to this desktop layout. So you know how to do it. We just need to select this footer content frame and just change the direction of auto layout frame to horizontal and change the spacing mode to space between and align everything to the center. And now I'm gonna eliminate this gap here. It's 116. So let's select the homepage tablet frame, head over to the frame section, and here I'm gonna type -116, and there is no gap anymore. All right, great. Our tablet version is also ready. Let's check everything out. I'm gonna see whether everything is responsive or not. Yes, everything is fluid. And now we can move on to the next lesson. So I'll see you there. Hi there, welcome back. Up until now, we designed 3 different breakpoints for our project. The desktop breakpoint, the tablet breakpoint, and the mobile breakpoint. But as you may remember, I mentioned that we might need to create another breakpoint as well. And in this video, we are going to do that. But why do we need another breakpoint? Don't we have all the things we need? The desktop, the tablet, and the mobile? Well, basically we have everything we need. But to take our design to the next level, we are going to create another breakpoint as well. Let me show you a few examples to truly understand what I mean. I'm going to go to a website called visa.co. There it is. At the moment, I'm previewing this website on a 4K screen. That's why you see everything is center aligned. And now, if I just inspect this page, as you can see, the dimension is written here. If you cannot see these elements, you can just click on this icon to enable all these elements. So here, look what happens when I try to shrink this page. You see that nothing happens to these elements. All these elements are center aligned and they are fixed. So their container size is fixed as well. As you can see, nothing happens to them. But look what happens when I keep shrinking. You see, nothing happens. And now at some point, everything starts to shrink. As you can see, at around 1440, everything starts to shrink. So the designer here create a fluid layout grid for the desktop version with this specific width, 1440, the one that we created here. And as you can see, this one is also fluid and everything shrinks. But for anything larger than that, these elements are not gonna scale. They're not gonna take up the whole available space because it wouldn't look good. Let me prove that to you. I'm gonna duplicate this home page and I'm gonna move it right here. Okay, let me just hide my layout grid and imagine we want to preview this website on a large screen. Here the width is 1440. I'm going to increase it. Look what happens. You see that our nav bar is scaled and now these buttons are placed on the right side. It's fine, but look what we have here. All these containers and also these cards are stretched, which is not good because we don't have an optimal length for our text layers. And also, it's hard for the user to scan the content this way. We don't want our users' eyes to scan the content like this, from this side of the screen all the way to this side of the screen. So instead, when it comes to larger screen sizes, it's better to center align everything, okay? Just like what you see here. If I just increase the size, everything is center aligned. And if I just shrink it, as soon as we hit that 1440 pixel breakpoint, everything starts to shrink, just like this. And then we will move on to another breakpoint, the tablet one, and the mobile version. All right, so in this video, we are going to create the desktop large breakpoint as well. And it's quite easy. If you remember, we also created a layout grid for it. If we head over to the grids and spacing page, here we created this desktop XL layout grid, and we are going to use this now. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to rename this, and I'm going to rename it to desktop XL. And for this, we don't need a wireframe because basically we are going to keep the same layouts and we should keep everything at the center. So I'm going to set the width back to 1440 and let's see what we need. Basically, we want to keep everything at the center and our containers should have a fixed width instead of having a percentage based size, right? At the moment, if we select our containers, all of them have their resizing option set to fill container. It means that their width is basically percentage based. It takes up a specific percentage of the screen's width. That's not what we want for this breakpoint. We want our containers to have a fixed width and we want them to stay right at the center. So what we should do is change the resizing option of all our containers and set a specific width for them. So what I'm going to do is select this homepage desktop XL frame, hit enter to select all these sections, hit enter again to select all the containers inside, and then change this resizing option from fill container to fixed width. But we are not done yet because for this larger breakpoint, it makes sense to slightly increase the width of our containers since we have more space, right? If I head over to the grids and spacing page, here if you zoom in, you see that our container should have a fixed 1312 pixels. Therefore, we need to set the width of all our containers to 1312 pixels. Don't worry about their placement, it's gonna be fine. Now again, I'm gonna select this desktop frame, hit enter to select all the sections and just align everything to the center, just like this. And now look what happens if I select this desktop frame and if I try to enlarge it. Look what happens. You see that? Now we have fixed containers, and no matter how big this frame gets, they always stay the same. And look what we have here. These backgrounds, these sections stretched, but the containers inside are intact. And that's why structuring your website properly matters when it comes to responsiveness. And this way, when you hand over the project to the developer, he or she is gonna love you because they can easily understand what's going on. They know the breakpoints, they know the sizes, they know the layout grids you use, they know everything. All right, great. So let me select this desktop XL frame, just set its width to 1920 for now. And now we are gonna reorganize everything here. I'm gonna bring this desktop version and put it right next to this XL version. Then let's select this tablet version and bring it here, and the mobile version right here. These frames should be placed right next to each other. And we don't need them anymore. We can just get rid of them since we already have them in the wireframe page. So I'm gonna get rid of them entirely. Now let's go ahead and preview our project. Since I'm using a large screen, I'm gonna select this one, Desktop XL, and I'm gonna hit this play button. All right, there it is. Here, as you can see, I cannot see the whole page. Actually, we get this horizontal scroll, which is not good. So to fix that, we need to click on this option. And here, I'm going to click on Fit Width. And now it fits my screen's width. Let's scroll down and see whether everything looks good or not. All right, here we have the social proof section. The features section looks good. Then we have the CTA section. Here we have the second features section. And now we have the integrations. Everything looks good. We have the testimonials, the FAQ section, again the CTA section, and finally we have the footer. I really like our result. I hope you like it too, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Welcome back. Now that our design is ready, it's time to go ahead and see whether we can componentize anything within our design or not. If you remember, when we were creating our design system, I mentioned that a design system can include almost all kinds of elements. It can include buttons, it can include sliders, it can include cards, etc. But I said that for small scale projects, it doesn't make any sense to start creating all those elements in advance and then start using them, because you're not sure what kind of elements you are going to need for that particular project. But once you're done with the design, you can go ahead and analyze your design and see whether there are elements that can be reused again and again or not, and whether you want to componentize them or not. So here, let's analyze our design. Let's see what kind of elements we used again and again and again. Well, obviously we used buttons again and again, these two buttons. And also we used these screenshots, but we usually don't componentize images. We also reused these icons, but these are already components. I already componentized them for you, if you remember. Now I'm going to scroll down. Well, we could turn these cards into components as well, but I'm not going to do that because I know that for other pages, I'm not going to use this card. But if you know that you're going to use this particular card on multiple pages within your project, then it makes sense to turn it into a component, because this way you can adjust the content quickly. What else? Well, we can also turn these logos into components, but I'm not going to do that for this project. For a small scale project, it doesn't make sense. And basically that's all. There is not much that we should turn into components. If I had designed many different components in advance, it would have been a waste of time because we wouldn't use them, right? That's why I said it's better to wait until our design is done and then try to create components. At least it's an approach that worked for me. So I think the only thing we need to componentize is these buttons. So you know what? I'm gonna select these two buttons, both of them. I'm gonna copy them, hit Ctrl+C or Command+C, and I'm going to create another page. When you want to componentize elements, make sure not to do it on the workspace page, because you need to keep your master components on a separate page. Otherwise, you might accidentally modify them. So I'm going to create another page and I'm going to call it components. And let's put it right here. It should be part of our design system. So maybe I can just copy this arrow icon as well and paste it right here. Perfect. Once again, I'm going to copy these buttons and just paste them right here in this page. So here basically we have two different types of buttons. We have a contain button and we have an outline button. So there are many ways we can componentize them, but basically what I'm going to do is put them inside a component set. So later we can add more and more variants to it if needed. So what I'm going to do is select them both, head over to the toolbar, and from here create a component set. So now inside we have two different variants, and I'm going to place this one below the contained one. All right. So for this component set, I'm going to create a few properties. Basically, I'm going to create the type property, whether it's contained, whether it's outlined or text. Then I'm going to create the size property that defines the size of these buttons. Usually for most projects, we may use 3 different sizes of buttons: small, medium, and large. This is the medium button. In the future, you may need to add more sizes to your component set, maybe small and large. And the last property is going to be the state. So whether it's default, hover, active, etc. So I'm going to select this component set, and from here, I'm going to rename it to type. Then I'm going to add another property here, variant. The name is going to be state. The value is going to be default. That's fine. And one more property is going to be size. And the value is going to be medium, and hit create property. All right, now let's select this variant. Here the type should be contained, the state should be default, size should be medium. For this one, I'm going to change the type to outlined. The state should be default and the size should be medium as well. At the moment, I'm not going to go ahead and add more states and more sizes to this component set, but you know how to do it. We already talked about it in the video about variants, if I remember correctly. But later, if you want, you can add more variants to it. For instance, you can just select these two. You can duplicate them, move them here. Let me just change their placement like that. For these, you can just change their sizes. Maybe you want to make them smaller. In that case, you can just change the padding. I'm going to select them both. I'm going to change the padding here to 8 and 12. And then you might also want to change the text style here. I'm going to select them both and just change the text style to text small semi-bold like this. And this one is going to be your small button. So you select them both and you change the size to small like this. Now, if you go to assets, and from here, you go to components and just drag and drop an instance of this button here. You'll see that you have the type, contained or outlined. You'll have the state. At the moment, we only have one state, so there is nothing else here. But we also have the size property. We can set it to small or medium, just like that. So now that we created this component, we need to replace our elements here. We need to replace these buttons within our design with these components. How am I going to do that? Well, it's simple. I'm going to drag and drop an instance of this button here. I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to select all these contained buttons, like this one, hold down the shift key, select this one. I'm going to hold down the shift key, select this one, and select this one. Then right click and hit paste to replace. Let me go to layers. Here I'm going to right click and hit paste to replace. And as you can see now, it has been replaced with an instance of this button. Then we need to do the same thing for the other button. But first, I'm gonna select it, duplicate it, move it to the left, change its type to outlined. I'm gonna copy it, hit Ctrl C or Command C, select this one, the sign in one, right click on it, paste to replace. It has been replaced with this instance of this component. And then we need to change the text. I'm going to change it to sign in. Now let's replace it with this one as well. I'm going to select it, right click on it, paste to replace, change the text to demo. And we need to repeat the same thing for all these buttons. I'm going to select this button, this learn more button, and also this one, and right click on it and paste to replace. Just like that, all these buttons have been replaced with an instance of our component. Obviously, you need to go ahead and replace all these buttons with these instances, but I'm not going to do that in this lesson. There is one more thing we can do. For some projects, you may need to componentize these elements. For example, you may need to componentize all your nav bars for different breakpoints. In that case, you can simply select all your nav bars for the desktop XL, for desktop, tablet, and mobile, copy them, hit Ctrl C or Command C, head over to components, paste them here. And now let's align them vertically. I'm gonna put this right below this one. Then I'm gonna put the navbar tablet component, and finally the mobile component, just like this. Now I'm gonna select them all and create a component set. And here I'm gonna rename this property to breakpoint, like that. Now I'm gonna select each variant. I'm gonna start with this one, and I'm gonna rename this value. It's gonna be desktop XL. This one is gonna be desktop. This one is gonna be tablet. And this one is gonna be mobile. And now whenever you create a page and you need this navbar, you don't need to just copy and paste it. You can just simply drag and drop an instance of this navbar to your page. So let me show you in the other page here. I'm gonna go to workspace. Let's suppose you create another desktop page. I'm gonna create a desktop frame, place it right here. You can simply head over to assets, or you can go to resources, and from here under components, just drag and drop a navbar into your desktop frame, and from here you can just change the breakpoint. But here there is a problem. It says the properties and values of this variant are conflicting. Change the applied values on this variant to resolve this. Well, let's see what's wrong. Here we have desktop XL. This one, oops, this one should be desktop, not desktop XL. Now it should work. Yeah, the warning is gone. And I'm gonna change the breakpoint to desktop. Let's align it to the center and top. Of course, you can set the constraints to left and right, like this, and it will be responsive again. And now the good thing is that this instance of this component is connected to the master component. So whenever you want to make some changes to your navbar, you can just do it here in the components page, and that change will be applied to all the instances of this navbar. Welcome back. Now that all our breakpoints are ready, it's time to create a breakpoint prototype. Let me show you what it is. Well, if you remember, I already showed you a few examples of how a website changes in terms of layout. So let me open up Apple's website, for instance, and let me inspect it. And here, as you can see, we can change the dimension to see how the layout changes based on different breakpoints, right? But unfortunately, Figma doesn't allow us to create this presentation in order to give it to the developer so that the developer can understand how our design should be converted to code. Therefore, we need to use a plugin, a very useful plugin called breakpoints in Figma. So here, I'm going to create a page and I'm going to call it prototype, just like this. We are going to put all our prototypes here. Now I'm going to head over to the workspace page and I'm going to select all these frames. I'm going to select them all, copy them, hit Ctrl C or Command C, head over to prototype and just paste them here. Okay. Now we are going to run the breakpoints plugin. So here I'm going to head over to resources, and if you look for breakpoints in the search bar, you will find this plugin. Just run it, and this plugin is a freemium plugin, so it has a free trial, and after that you'll need to get a license for that. But you can try it for free for 15 days for every design file. If you go ahead and create a new design file, you'll get another trial for that project. So I'm going to hit continue, and it says select existing layout or create a new one. I'm going to click on new adaptive layout, this one, and it creates this responsive layout frame for us. I'm going to place it somewhere around here. So basically here we need to specify the range of our breakpoints. Here, as you can see, we have 320 to 600, but I'm going to add a few breakpoints here. I'm going to hit this plus button, just like this. Since we have 4 different breakpoints, we need to get 4 different plus icons right here. At the moment we have 2, which means that we have 2 different ranges. I'm going to hit the plus button again. Now we have 3 different ranges, but we need 1 more, so I'm going to hit it once again. All right, perfect. Now we need to specify these values depending on our needs. Well, these values depend on our breakpoint sizes. So here for mobile, if I just select this frame, you see that we used 375, all right? But this is not the smallest phone. If I hit A on my keyboard right here, you'll see that there is a smaller iPhone here, iPhone SE, which is 320. So basically we could start our range from 320 and we could go all the way to 430, which is the largest iPhone here. So I'm gonna select this frame again. We have 320 already. I'm gonna set this to 430, just like this. This is gonna be the range of our mobile breakpoint. And then for the next breakpoint, I'm gonna go to 1200. So basically this is gonna be our tablet breakpoint. And then we are gonna set this one to 1440, which is gonna be our desktop breakpoint, this range between 1200 and 1440. And finally, we have this range. This number doesn't matter. We could set it to 1920 or more. The reason it doesn't matter is because here we created this large breakpoint and it has a fixed container width. That's why it doesn't matter. So I'm gonna leave it as is. Now we need to tell this plugin which frame we are gonna use for each range. I'm gonna select this one. I'm gonna click on this plus button. And then I'm gonna click on this one. And as soon as I do that, it turns my frame into a component. Now I'm gonna select this one and I'm gonna click on this tablet frame. Next, let's select this one and click on this desktop frame. And finally, we need to select this one and just select our desktop X large frame, just like this. And now, as you can see, our presentation is ready, but actually it's messed up a little bit. Don't worry, it's because of its height. We are gonna fix that. So if I just select this one and I see its height, as you can see, it's 7,920. So I'm gonna select it and just increase the height to 7,920, just like this. Now it looks good. And now let's see how this prototype looks. I'm gonna zoom in. Here, as you can see, we have the ranges we specified. And now we can just grab one side of this frame, left click and drag, and see how our design adapts to different screen sizes. Look what happens. You see that? As soon as I reached this breakpoint, this particular breakpoint, the layout changed to our desktop frame. Now within this range, we are using the desktop frame, and since we made it fluid, everything is responsive. That's exactly what we need. And now, once we reach this point, it switches to the tablet breakpoint, like that. And if we just continue shrinking it, like this, we'll get into the mobile breakpoint, just like this. And finally, we can shrink it like this. So the reason it's a good idea to create this presentation, to create this breakpoint prototype, is because when you hand over this project to the developer, he or she can understand how your design should adapt to different screen sizes, and they can easily start implementing it. Welcome back. Once you're done with the design process, it's time to prepare your design and it's time to prepare your project for the implementation, also known as the design handoff. The design handoff is basically a process of handing over your final designs to the developer for implementation. And it's a very important stage of the design process. So how should you prepare your design for implementation? Well, first, let's create another page here. I'm gonna call it handoff. You can also call it implementation or whatever you want. I'm gonna call it handoff. Sometimes it makes sense to add a date here as well. If you are handing over part of your project and you are gonna hand over the other parts after a few weeks. All right, in this page, you should include everything the developer needs to convert your design to code. It could be your layout grids and spacing system. It could be your prototype, your breakpoint prototype, and also obviously the main designs. So let's start with the main designs. I'm gonna go to the workspace here. And from here, I'm going to select all these pages like this. I'm going to copy them, hit Ctrl C or Command C, and just paste them inside this handoff page. Well, for this project, we only designed one landing page, but usually when you're designing a website, you design multiple pages. In that case, it's better to categorize your frames based on the breakpoint. So for instance, if you design the login page, the pricing page, the contact us page for the desktop XL, you can simply move all these things down like this, and you can put all those other frames right next to it. Then for the desktop breakpoint, you can do the same. You can move these two breakpoints down and put the frames for this breakpoint right next to it, and so on. All right, good. Now let's head over to the grids and spacing system. And from here, I'm gonna select this layout grids, I'm gonna copy it, head over to the hand of page and just paste it here so that the developer could understand easily what kind of layout grids you used. You can simply select this layout grid and just unhide it like that for all these pages, or hide it. The next thing we need is the breakpoint prototype we created. So you head over to this page, you select this frame, copy it and paste it right here. What else do we need? Well, depending on your design, you might need to add some notes to your project as well, so that the developer could understand how each section should be stylized, structured, or animated. Alright, if you want to achieve a specific type of interaction, you can just add a note and let the developer know about it. The way you can do that is simple. You can easily go to resources, and from here, head over to the widgets tab. Here you can find some FigJam widgets. All right, there are many useful widgets you can use, but the one I'm gonna use is this one, Note. Okay, I'm gonna click on it and hit add to add a note widget here. So now I can take this note and put it wherever I want, like this, and I can simply add a note. So let's suppose you want to let the developer know that here for this testimonial section, you want this gradients to be implemented in code, and you want to let the developer know that this is not an image. All right. In that case, you can simply put this note down here. Let me bring it down. I'm going to put it right next to the testimonial section, just like this. And here you can start typing create a gradient using the CSS transparent gradient, just like this. So now the developer knows that this is not going to be an image, all right? And he or she knows that it should be created using CSS transparent gradient. The good thing about this widget is that you can create different types of notes. So imagine you have created this stylized note. Now you want to create a structural note as well. So in that case, you can duplicate it, hit Ctrl D or Command D, and then you can move it right here. And let's put a note for the developer to let him or her know that one of these cards should be fluid and the other one should have a fixed width. Okay, so here we can change the type to something else, maybe a specification. And as you can see, the color changes, and you can just start typing the large card in each row should have a percentage based width, but the small one, the small card, should have a fixed width. This way, the developer can easily understand how these cards should behave depending on the screen sizes. Now I'm going to duplicate it and I'm going to create another note for this section, for the FAQ section. And this one is all about how these FAQ items should behave. Basically, we need to have an accordion effect. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to change the type of this note to maybe question, to just change its color. And here I'm going to type the FAQ items should collapse and expand, and in parentheses I'm going to type accordion effect, just like this. But you can also add more information about this effect. If you want the developer to really understand how these FAQ items should behave, you can go to a website called CodePen. If you're a developer, I'm sure you're familiar with that, but if you're not, that's fine. Let me show you how it works. It's called codepen.io, and it's basically a website for front-end developers to just test different types of interactions. So here I'm going to type accordion, and as you can see, there are many different examples here. I'm going to click on next once again, and let's open up one of these, maybe this one. And here, as you can see, there is the HTML code, the CSS, and the JavaScript, and the developer can easily preview these accordion cards like that. So you can grab the link of this page, copy it, and here you can just paste that link. So the developer can easily grab this link and open up this example. All right, great. So we put some notes here. Now it's time to prepare our assets and export them, such as images, icons, logos, etc. Well, when it comes to icons and logos, if it's possible, export them as SVG files, because those are very small files and they are scalable. So you don't need to export them at 2x, 3x, etc. For instance, if you want to export these icons, you can simply select them and just head over to export, hit this plus button, and from here change the format to SVG and hit export and put it inside an asset folder. Then you can export the next one, and just put them all inside one folder. For logos, the same. These logos are all SVGs, but if they are not SVG files and they are PNG files, that's fine. You can also export them as PNG files, but you need to make sure to export them at 2x at least, to make sure that they are high quality, and once they are rendered in browser, they are not going to lose quality. So keep that in mind. And the next thing I'm going to mention about exporting assets is when you want to export images. For example, these screenshots, right? When you want to export them, first make sure to remove all the effects. In this case, we've added some drop shadow to it, so we need to hide it first, and then we need to export this image. Then we can add a note here and let the developer know that this drop shadow should be added in CSS, and it's not part of the asset itself. It's so important, keep that in mind. The same thing is true when you have a dark overlay on top of an image. For example, when you darken an image to make sure that you have enough contrast between the foreground and background. In that case, you should also remove all the stylings and then export that image. Now let me go ahead and export this image quickly. It can be PNG, it's fine, I'm gonna export it. All right, there it is. Here is our screenshot. If I just check its size, look what we've got. It's 171 kilobytes. It's fine, but we could also compress this image to optimize for SEO. If you remember, in our project brief, it was mentioned that our images, our assets should be optimized. Therefore, we should compress them and then hand them over to the developer. How can we do that? Well, there are many ways to do that. One way is to just use a plugin right here. You can use the Tiny Image Compressor plugin. It's again a freemium product, therefore you need to get a license if you want to use it again and again, but it's a very handy plugin. So here you can select all the images you want to export, then you can just decrease the quality here using this slider. I'm going to decrease it down to like 60%. I think it's enough. Then you hit export and it's saved. And as you can see, it says you just saved a total of 119 kilobytes, which is awesome. Another alternative to this plugin is the Tiny PNG website. This website is also great. You can just drag and drop your asset here like this. And as you can see, it compresses it easily. You can hit download and there it is. Here is your compressed image. So whenever you have large images like these screenshots, in that case, make sure to compress them using these ways and then hand them over to the developer. And that's basically how you should prepare your project for the design handoff process. There are many other things we can do to make this process smoother. For example, we can create a presentation with all the design feedback we've received, but since it's a fictional project and we haven't received any feedback on it, I just skip that part. But for a real world project, I would create a simple like 4 to 5 page presentation and I document all the notes and all the design feedback as well.